think it's a good idea to be arrogant when you're young. I think the only good advice I've ever given people, learn as much as you can about the people whose work you love, and then ignore it, because you can't do what they did.
Dave Foley is an Emmy-nominated actor, comedian, writer, and producer from shows like the Emmy-winning show Fargo, Kids in the Hall, A Bug's Life, and NewsRadio. Kids in the Hall, my favorite. Okay, that was my childhood. I had such a crush on you.
Oh, who can blame you? When did it fade?
Did you ever do a show drunk?
Oh my God, all of them. I mean, not by the start of the show, but by the end of it. The stage manager would try to get us to wait here and be, stay hidden from the audience, be polite. We just would no, fuck off. We just go out and start dancing to the shadowy men in front of the audience.
This tracks so much of why we're friends.
And I was going to go on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I texted him, Joe, you're going to be happy to hear I'm deep into UFOs right now. Joe messaged back, said, it's all bullshit. These people are crazy. And I send him these list of movies you should watch. Then I get a text back from him around 4 a.m. I'm back in.
It's a whole nother level. A whole nother level. A whole nother level.
Hi.
That's no start.
Wait, okay, so
Hi.
so one of my dear friends, Dave Foley, I am so excited to get into this and get into the Emmys party. Also Fargo. I'm obsessed with this show. I was ripped. I felt like it felt like The Shining, like there was the Shining music. It felt.
Oh yeah, Jeff Russo, the composer for that show, is fantastic.
Oh my God. And so you were here. So first of all, how was the Emmys? How was parties?
Well, you've been.
Yeah, I've done the night before.
Yeah.
And it's always, it's like the CAA party where you're like, oh, there's Spielberg and there's Tom Hanks. And
oh, no, you went to the Oscars. I think you went to the Oscars. Yeah.
No, but sometimes, I think Spielberg.
That's true. They make TV occasionally.
Totally.
Yeah. It was, it's like, it's overwhelming. I haven't been in a while. I know it's, getting through the award show itself is always the same experience of just going, oh, how many more? But it was very exciting when Lamorne Morris won his Emmy for Fargo, so that was exciting for all of us.
Love him.
He's so great. He was so great on the new girl.
Yeah, he was so great.
And he's pretty awesome in his BMO ads.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I loved his speech. I loved his performance. Oh my God, he broke my heart.
He's a great guy. He's a really great guy. And very funny and really nice.
I randomly was there, at his house, totally random. One of my friends was like, hey, do you want to just, come hang with me and my friends? And so then I was just there. I was like, oh, it's the new guy.
Yeah, I know. My daughter was very impressed that I'm friends with him. Because that was one of our dad and daughter shows to watch.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so what was it like for you to film on Fargo? Where were you guys filming? How long were you guys filming?
Well, we were in Calgary, and we were there about 6 months.
And you're from Canada.
Yeah, I'm from Canada, but I'm from Toronto, which is which is the Florida of Canada. We're as south as you can get in Canada.
Right.
And so so I'm used to Toronto winters, but 34 below. I'm not used to that.
That's insane.
Yeah, I'm not. And it's weird in Calgary because they got these Chinooks so you'll go from 34 below one day, then the next day it'll be 34, 35, maybe 40 degrees. And,
oh my God.
From 34, so the weather jumps around, but there were a lot of days of 34 below and worse.
And so how did you get into the character? So at the very beginning of Fargo, if you haven't seen it, every time they're like, this is based on a true story, and all the names have been changed.
Yes, which is a lie. It's just a flat out lie. For people who haven't it was a lie when the Coen brothers did it in the movie.
Yep.
And apparently there's no law against saying it.
Because the story, it's it's a story that's true that we made up, but it's a it's a story.
Yes.
That,
yeah. There's no panel you have to get past to claim your story is true.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and I think, that notion you just sort of, I think if anyone at this point still thinks it's all true.
I literally did. So halfway through, I was like, this can't be real. Okay, the guy who is, who his backstory apparently, he had lived 500 years, and I was like, okay, guys, what's going on? This is not a true story. So I had to look it up, and then I was like, wait a minute, this is not true. So in the actual Fargo itself, that was also not true. So.
None of that was true. Yeah, and I mean, look, there was a flying saucer in season 2. Which is season 2 of Fargo. It's a big plot point.
We're totally getting into that. By the way, we're gonna
into flying saucers.
We're gonna get into like some of the stuff that you've done.
Well, I gotta say, I gotta say off the top for people tuning in, some of my favorite conversations I've had in recent years have been with you.
Oh my God! No, I literally, little backstory. We met on Clubhouse, just talking about aliens and conspiracy theories that are true. And we just had the best conversations. And then I had to know more, and I had to know what your experiences are. But before we get into the aliens, and I know you have a podcast that's also dealing with aliens.
Yeah.
I wanted to
go on with Fargo.
I wanted to find out more.
Show business first.
Well, I mean, it's like,
aliens be damned.
No, I feel like we're gonna get into that for like another hour. Okay, so Fargo, what was your experience like? How was it working with Jennifer Jason Leigh, who was absolutely iconic? You were such an incredible duo. Just tell me all about that experience.
Well, it was one of those, like, first when my representatives called me. I have representatives. I don't know if I don't like to boast, but I have representatives. And they said, "Oh, Fargo wants you to play a part," and it was like I didn't let them finish the sentence. It was yes, just yes, because I was a big fan of the show, and I always said some of the best writing on TV ever, and so I was very excited. So I didn't know anything when I said yes. Then I found out I'd be doing most of my scenes with Jennifer, which of course made me think, oh God, I hope I'm not just an off-camera voice when they finally edited it all together. To avoid my horrible performance compared to her.
You were incredible. Yeah. Like, I didn't even recognize you, by the way. I was like, where's Dave? I was like, eye patch? Oh my God.
Yeah. No, and she's so she's so much fun to watch work. Like, just being that close to her when she's acting is great. And she's such a delightful, generous, lovely person to be around that, all those, like, shooting all those scenes was just nothing but pleasure,
Yeah. And it's kind of because she played such a different character that was so unlikable and so, like, she's so you had Juno Temple, who was playing, like, the tiger, the representation of a tiger. And then you have Jennifer Jason Leigh, who's playing opposite her, who's also a tiger, like the equivalent. That they're very much the same. That I will chew you up and spit you out, destroy you.
Yeah.
And what was that? So it's so funny because I had so many questions, and then when I figured out this was not a true story, I was like, how did you get into the character? Like, what were your ideas? Like, how did you who this character was?
Yeah. Well, they make it very easy because Noah's writing is so clear that it it's like if you just pretty much all you have to do is just get the words right. And it's odd because when Noah's doesn't talk much on set as a director. He's one of those directors that just sort of watches and goes, and only if you do something that really annoys him, then he'll correct it.
And how is his process? How will he deliver that message?
Well, I'd say for the most part, we would all be, and all the actors shared the same experience of going, I don't know if Noah likes what I'm doing or not. And the only way you knew that you did a good take was you'd see Noah setting up the scene for the next shot. So Noah would walk on, he'd just be, okay, well, let's move over here. And that's how you knew you'd been good.
So you just look around and go, oh.
Well, the cameras are moving.
I guess we got it.
Yeah.
Did we get it?
Yeah. But no, yeah, it was not, yeah, it was a very quiet. and it was very nice. Though he was very. We went to dinner one night with a few of the cast, and he was very nice, and he gave me a really nice compliment. He said that he never felt like he needed to direct me.
Yeah.
Although there were scenes later in the shoot that he did.
And what were some of the notes?
He gave very few notes. It was basically, most of his notes were just about like tone or pace, because it's always with Fargo. There's that balance of the dark comedy, with the drama, and so it was always like, really it was the notes would usually be about, let's bring up the comedy a little bit more in this beat. Let's dial that back. That's about it.
Is that hard for you? Because I feel like in life, there's always just comedy just built in, where it's it's like you have, life is kind of, at least to me, it's like a dramedy, where it's like you have all these like highs and lows, where it's tragedy, it's suffering, and then there's comedy, and it's like they say that comedy is suffering delayed, or is it suffering delayed, or is it
tragedy plus time?
Yes, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I first learned that from Lenny Bruce.
Oh, nice.
I'm not sure who first came up with that, but yeah.
Did you meet Lenny Bruce?
No, he was dead when I was a baby. But I did. Before I dropped out of high school, I was trying to write a paper about Lenny Bruce, so I did tons of research, but then never wrote the paper. So I read like tons and tons of I was like, this back when I was in high school, going to the public, Central Library in Toronto and going through the microfiche files,
That's amazing.
and reading old like New York Times interviews from the late 50s,
So were you fascinated by comedy, like from the very beginning? Were you always gravitating towards comedy? Was that sort of like, I feel like comedians, if you're funny, at least for me, it's always, how to make my mom laugh, and everything's really tense. My mom is screaming at me. How do I make myself like really lovable and likable in this moment? What was that like for you? So what was comedy for you? And comedy was everything like in the family. Like that's how we, we would watch like SNL. We would, watch like just tons of comedies growing up, and that was sort of the way like me and my mom would bond.
My family was very much about watching TV comedy was very important. It was a way to get through an evening without any explosions. Being the child of an alcoholic,
Yeah.
So it was, so comedy was hugely important. Everyone in my
Was it your
family loved
dad,
it.
or?
Oh, my dad, yeah. My mother was just English, and that's its only
Stiff upper lip.
that represents its own problems. Yeah. But yeah, when I was a kid, it was always like, watching, the whole family would gather to watch MASH, All in the Family, Mary Tyler Moore, and also all the British comedies that we got in Canada, including Monty Python and
Monty Python, it's classic.
Mary
Tyler Moore was pretty good.
Yeah, so we, the Bob Newhart Show, everything, all those classic 70s, comedy shows were staples in our house. And being funny was important. And having a good sense of humor was important. And again, it was just a time that you knew, as long as we were watching MASH,
Everything was okay.
Yeah, nothing was going to go wrong. But during the commercial breaks could be tense, but but that was really the one bonding thing in our family. That and hockey too.
Oh,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then there's also like fights. Like I feel like every time I've watched hockey, I'm always like rooting for the fights. I'm like, yeah, get on that, because it's like it's an okay sort of like,
and you're full of bloodlust.
Yeah, the Viking in me.
That's what people know about you.
If for people who don't know, I've come from some Vikings, so I think Rollo the Viking pirate, ruler of Normandy. So I guess it's just sort of...
And inventor of Rollo chocolates.
Yeah. No, that never happened.
No? Oh.
You would think.
Yeah,
maybe,
they're great chocolates.
They're
I don't know, Americans
great,
don't know about Rollos,
No, they're
I don't think.
fantastic.
They're British.
So then how did you make that a career? Did you have like any brothers and sisters? Was there sort of competing like
I had my older brother who everyone in the family thought was the funny one. And I'm just gonna say, Michael, you weren't. But I was kind of the quiet one. I was, I guess, sort of the peacekeeper in the family.
Were you more introverted?
Oh, very, very, yeah, very. I was a very introverted kid, but funny. That was my way. That was my
You're
way
coping.
of I was
Surviving.
painfully shy and insecure, but I was always funny, so I could always get laughs. My junior kindergarten report card would say, "We appreciate Dave's great sense of humor."
That's amazing.
You know?
Oh my God. So how did you figure out how to make that a career? Like, when was that thought process for you where you were like, wow, I can bring joy to people's lives. I can stop fights. I can make the world a better place through comedy. And then how did you figure out, like, how did you make that jump? Because at least for me, my parents were like, don't do this. Like, don't be an actor. Anything with the arts, and that was my skill set, it was, painting, it was writing, it was telling stories since I was 5. And my mom was like, you're not going to make any money. You're going to be poor your whole life, and go be an accountant. And I was like, this is not, I'm sorry, it's just not. So how did you make that jump?
Well, I was largely it was because actually it was a friend of mine. Yeah, when I went to like this alternative high school, like a hippie high school in the late 70s, and a friend of mine who I would ride to school on the TTC, Toronto Transit. All the time. It was a good like 45-minute ride to school. And so one day I was riding with her, Evelyn Chapea was her name, and we were on the bus, and I was making her laugh all the way for the 45 minutes. And then as we're like getting off the bus, she goes, you should do stand-up. And I went, no, I never thought about it. And I thought, I'll see if I'll try to write something and see what happens.
And then from there, so you wanted to impress a girl?
Yeah, and it wasn't even that, because she was like, we were just friends,
Wow.
Yeah. She had a boyfriend, and we were just good friends. Don't get me wrong, the rest of my career was all about trying to impress girls. So I thought, well, all right, I'll try it. And I thought, well, I wrote some stand up.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, the only way to see if it's actually good is to go out and get on stage in a comedy club. So I went down to Yuck Yucks in Toronto.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 17, I think.
Oh my God.
Probably just about to turn 18, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so you go to Yuck Yucks. And so did you do open mic?
Yeah, I did the open mic.
And how'd that go?
I killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
On my first try. Yeah, killed, and thought, oh, this is pretty good.
That's amazing. Do you remember your bits at all?
I do remember some of it. It was funny because I was writing. I guess I was 7. Yeah, because I was writing about my loss of virginity. It was my first monologue.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was the, because it was fairly
comedy.
fresh in my mind at the time. I'm trying to remember what the joke. I mean, I remember one joke was just saying to people, it's good. I want to establish that we have a common base of knowledge to communicate. And I said, so I said, has anyone here ever been a virgin? and I said, because I recently was, and I talk about losing my virginity and finding it more difficult than I thought it would be. And the joke was, I don't know how to put this delicately, but I've never been good at threading a needle either. So that was like one of my first jokes.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So then, did you do stand up? So, and when did that sort of come into like Kids in the Hall? Okay, that was my childhood. That was what I grew up on. I had such a crush on you. I think I told
who can blame
you?
When did it fade?
No, I mean, I still do.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So yeah, like you just, oh my God, it was so, I love sketch comedy. Was that live at all? Was that like, people talk about SNL and being like a really toxic environment, but I feel like it's Canadian, right? You guys were Canadian, so it feels like it was, it's Canadians running things. So it's like, it's going to be less intense in, say, like New York.
We were toxic in our own way. Because it was, this was like the, early 80s. So, it was very, a punk sensibility to everything. And some of the guys in the troupe, I'm just going to be honest, are assholes. I think they know it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was always the battle between the assholes and the passive aggressive ones. Kevin and I being the passive aggressive ones.
So you just holding your anger and being like, I'm not going to kill you, and the other guys are like, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, I'll do whatever I need to destroy you.
Oh man.
But then that would usually be just in the lead up, like the writing and the rehearsal, and that we'd fight constantly. And then we'd get on stage for the performances, and we'd all love each other.
Yeah,
'cause,
totally. You never would have guessed.
Yeah, because when it came down to the binding principle of the Kids in the Hall was that the other four guys were the funniest guys in the world. So you always just go, well, they are a pain in the ass, but they are the funniest guys in the world.
So wait, so
But
so
how
were
did
the
I get
assholes?
there?
Yeah, how do we get there? And
Oh, well,
also,
okay,
second question, how
so-
were they assholes?
All right, so I started doing stand-up. I was doing stand-up for, I've been doing open mics for almost a year, I guess, or close to it anyway. And then, then I decided I was going to take an improv class. Because I thought that might help with stand-up. I knew Lenny Bruce did a lot of improv.
Your friend.
Yeah. So I thought, well, yeah, let's take some improv classes, which led me to going to Second City improv class.
That's awesome.
And in my very first class, the teacher, Alan Gutman, just randomly paired me up with this guy who I'd never met, who turned out to be Kevin McDonald. And so it was basically really was. He just went, okay, we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And we did a mirror exercise, which is a really boring exercise where you're just supposed to mirror each other's movements. And Kevin and I managed to, mock the exercise as we were doing it and made each other laugh, like idiots.
That's amazing.
And we both sort of went, oh, this guy's funny. And then all through that class, every scene Kevin got up and did was brilliant. And I got up and I was pretty funny. So at the end of the class, Kevin goes, you want to join my improv team? And I said, okay.
That's amazing.
And that time it was, the original Kids in the Hall was myself, Kevin, and a guy named Luciano Casimiri, who's still in comedy, great writer, and probably the funniest guy in the group. And he was in the original Kids in the Hall, and even before Scott joined. So we started, doing sketches together, and after a while, we kept hearing about these guys from Calgary that were really good, and we started doing shows at something called Theater Sports. So we started doing theater sports together, and we heard about this other theater sports team in Calgary that everyone said was a lot like us. Because we were kind of
awesome.
We were these guys that we were very, very funny, but we didn't follow any of the rules of theater sports, so we never won the competition part.
But you just had so much fun doing it.
Yeah, because we would do games like because you would challenge each other to games, and normally it would just be like trying to rhyming or first line, last line. But we created challenges like most scenes before Kevin gets an asthma attack. Oh, no. And so it would be Luch and I would do scenes while Kevin McDonald ran around in circles around the theater as fast as he could, and he had terrible asthma.
No.
So basically,
he would die literally for comedy.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm going to die on this hill.
And not only
literally.
that, but then when the other team had to do their version of it, Kevin also had to run around again.
Wow. So you know what? You guys won no matter what. It didn't matter if you won.
We didn't care about.
You're winning at life.
Yeah. So there's always we would always be like the funniest team, and then in the note sessions after every show, the people running theater sports would complain about the fact that we didn't treat the show with respect.
Yeah, but I'm sure the audience loved it.
We were an audience favorite.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense.
And then we heard that basically there were these guys in Calgary that were doing the exact same thing. Awesome. And then we heard they were going to move. They were moving to Toronto, and so we thought, and everyone kept saying, there's going to be this big competition between the two weird troops. And basically, we did one show where we were all on the same bill, and I think that night when we saw them, we thought, they're funny, and they liked what we were doing, and I think that night we decided to merge, so there was no competition.
Wow!
So we merged with their group, and a few guys quit their team, and a couple, and Luch eventually quit our team, and then Scott came in eventually, and that's when it became the five of us in '84.
And wait, so did you guys create Kids in the Hall, or was Kids in the Hall?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we created it. Yeah. So we did. So
this was your baby. You guys all came together.
Yeah, and by '84 it was the five of us, and we've been doing live shows since like '82, and we kept doing live shows until really right up until about like '87, '88 at the Rivoli in Queen Street.
Oh my God.
And we'd write like a new hour of material every week, and we'd do like one show a week, and we'd basically get together Friday, start writing, and by Monday have a show ready to put on stage.
So this was just like SNL.
Yeah, except without any money or support team. We would lose money every week.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So then how did you how do you go from, being on stage to putting it on TV shows and in my living room? How did that happen?
Oh, well, that was, as I said, we started doing the shows, and then I guess over about a year, the show suddenly caught on in Toronto. It became like a big sort of like cult thing in Toronto. So we went from like an empty, like playing to like maybe 12, 15 people, to suddenly having the place packed like to 2 or 3 times capacity.
Crazy.
And and like way past fire marshal rules. And and the show just caught on, and people in comedy started hearing about it. And I guess one of the first people was a guy named Dave Thomas, who was in SCTV. And some people might know him from Grace Under Fire. He was on that show and a bunch of movies, but a genius comedian. So he became sort of a mentor to us.
That's amazing.
And he came down, and saw our shows and helped us out. And then other people from SCTV, like Marty Short and Catherine O'Hara. Like Catherine used to come a lot to the shows.
Oh my God, is she also from Canada?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and these were people like to us. We're like they were gods to us.
Oh, she's a god.
Yeah, and we were like, I remember like going with Kevin and Luch. We would go down to watch the improv sets at the old fire hall with Second Cities Theater, because the doorman would sneak us in, and like I remember like one time Catherine was there doing it, and I remember just the 3 of us standing out on the street staring in the door as to see Catherine just walking backstage, and we were just like, oh my God, that's Catherine O'Hara. And like and then suddenly like a year later she was our friend.
Oh my God.
Yeah, she and her sister Mary Margaret used to come down to our shows at the Rivoli all the time, and Robin Duke, who was one of her best friends, would come down. And then like Marty like Marty Short started coming down, Joe Flaherty, Eugene Levy.
And was he on SNL at this point?
Marty in those days? No, he was in '84 on SNL. So yeah, he would have just started doing Saturday Night Live.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And he also, and he was friends with Lorne Michaels, as was Dave Thomas, was the star of a show called The New Show that Lorne produced after he left Saturday Night Live. And so they all, started telling Lorne about us. And so he sent up Al Franken to scout us for Saturday Night Live. So Al came up, and Dave was there for it too, and we did like our whole show in an empty club, so it was for Al Franken. And then 2 of the guys, Mark and Bruce, got hired as apprentice writers in '85, and which is clearly, if you go back and watch, the worst season ever of Saturday Night Live.
I was actually recently going through and. Did you know that Robert Downey Jr. was on SNL?
That was the year Mark and Bruce were there.
That's what he says as well. He said it was like the absolute worst season
of
all time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You had Randy Quaid, Robert Downey Jr., Anthony Michael Hall. God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was just a weird cast.
I mean, they are all so funny. I mean, it makes sense. Like, but it
was like
you never would have guessed.
You had because Robert Downey and Anthony Michael Hall, they were like teenagers.
Oh my God.
They were like babies.
Oh my God.
But
that's kind of how you started out. I mean, you started doing stand up pretty young.
I was as a teenager. Yeah. Yeah. But so this was a terrible year, and everyone thought, oh, SNL is going to be canceled.
Somehow they made it through.
Yes. Lorne fired everybody. And changed the whole cast the next year. But so at the end of that year, all of Lorne's friends kept telling him he should come up and see the Kids in the Hall. And so and this never happens. Lorne came up and saw us.
And
Like Lorne doesn't go out and go to shows. He's Lorne Michaels.
oh my God! And then what happened?
So he flew to Toronto, came to see us at the Rivoli on Queen Street. We did a show that was way too long, and we even did like sketches we'd never tried before, and, and it was like, and everyone in Toronto knew this was happening. Like word got out that Lorne was coming up to scout the Kids in the Hall, and they were like every other comedy act in town was trying to get in there. In fact, at one point in the middle of our show, somebody ran up on the stage, and this woman got up, stood on her head, and started doing a rhyming poem to try and get Lorne to come across the street to see a different troupe play. And
you can't be serious. This is like a show within a show.
Yeah, and so
That's ridiculous.
This woman standing on her head doing in the middle of one of our sketches, and of course Scott.
She's playing out real life intrusive thoughts.
Yes,
in real time,
yeah.
Like literally, like the thing. You're like, oh, what if I just did this? And you're like, no, she actually did it.
Yeah, and then.
So I'm sure it didn't go over too well.
No, well, Scott.
Or did you play it like part of the bit?
No, Scott. No, we didn't know. Scott looked at her and just went, "Get the fuck off our stage."
Good.
And knocked her over.
Oh my God. This is chaos.
Yeah, so don't fuck with us.
Oh my God.
Again, we were the Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, you're punk rock.
Yeah. It was like, and so that, there was no, we weren't going to be cute about it.
Yeah.
Just get off.
Okay, so after this, was Lorne didn't know what to make of it, so he was looking to recruit you guys for SNL, and then was he like, if the show went better, then maybe, or how did that?
Well, he was there, and he was trying to figure out, and I think there was about a week where we were waiting to hear who Lorne was going to take down. But we kept hearing he was going to bring some of us to Saturday Night Live. Wow. And then we'd hear different reports of who was going to go, And then after about a week, we heard that Lorne had changed his mind, and that he wanted to create a new show for the Kids in the Hall, because he thought the show was that there was something unique about it. Yeah. And he thought that I think Lorne said, well, they're of a piece, was what he called us, and said it would, he said it would be a shame to break them up. So it was entirely Lorne's call to keep us together.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So we're all like, we're totally in debt to him for that.
So he helped put the show together?
Yeah. He decided he wasn't going to bring any of us to Saturday Night Live. Instead, he was going to fly us all down to New York to live there for a while, and start writing like a special. And he went out and try and sell someone on the idea. And we started doing shows in New York at the West Bank Cafe, which is over in Hell's Kitchen area, and then we would also do shows down at the South Street Seaport,
right.
For a bunch of Wall Street dudes, And
I feel like comedy in Wall Street dudes never goes very well.
It didn't go well for us. It was not cool for us.
When you hear stand-up comedians, they have to do a gig where they're paid a certain amount of money in front of a corporate gig. They get a shit ton of money, but it never goes well. Yeah. You're like, why did I do that? Why did I just?
Well, the Seaport back in the late 80s.
Comedy suicide.
It was not full of hipsters in those days. But the West Bank was full of hipsters, so that was cool. So that we sort of built an audience there, and we started getting invited to do things like there used to be a what was it called? Mike's Talent Show, I think it was called back. It was like a show that Eric Bogosian would show up and do scenes, So it was like kind of a real cool kind of artsy comedy venue.
That's amazing.
So we got invited to be a part of that community, pretty quickly.
So then so Lorne Michaels, wow. I mean, it's really interesting because he knows how he's so talented at picking people and picking huge stars and just over and over and over. So he apparently never laughs, right? And if you make Lorne laugh, then I feel like that's like, you have a huge win.
He smiles.
He smiles.
Yeah, he does smile. And when you make Lorne smile, That feels pretty
It's
good.
something.
Yeah.
So then how did he, he loved what you guys were doing. And then he decided to put it, for the rest of the world. And
Yeah,
how long did that take? Like how many episodes did you guys have to write? And then where did you film? Was that in New York?
Well, we were in New York for about 6 months, and he eventually, we kept doing showcase shows constantly, and eventually he convinced HBO to pick us up for a 1 hour special. And at that time, we also had a great friend of ours who sadly just died a few weeks back. A guy named David Handelman, who was a great writer. He was a Rolling Stone writer at the time, and he sort of found us and started coming to our shows at the West Bank and at the South. He would come down to the South Street shows too. And he kind of became our friend and fan. And he wrote an amazing article about us. He got us in the Rolling Stone What's Hot issue with Lisa Bonet on the cover, and she was naked. So that issue sold a lot of copies, and so we were listed in Rolling Stone as what was hot in comedy.
That's huge. Yeah, Rolling Stone back in the day was the cutting edge magazine, rock and roll, rock star.
And we had never been on TV. Nobody knew who the hell we were.
That's amazing.
We never played to a room bigger than what should have been 200 people in it.
Right.
And so he wrote this great article about us, and I remember also I remember the Camper Van Beethoven was the hot band in that issue as well. So we've always had a bond.
That's awesome.
So we got this we were listed as being the future of comedy before we'd ever done anything.
That's amazing. Those are, and how do you navigate that when people have these crazy expectations for you? So you're like, I'm just a kid from Toronto, just doing comedy, and then I've had some friends where they can handle it really well, or they have to go to therapist, a therapist, and deal with this immense amount of pressure to kind of navigate. Did you just ignore it? How did you?
I think more than anything, we just ignored it. We just our attitude was always before any of this was happening. We just had this we were young men, and we had this attitude that we no doubts about it. We were the best sketch comedy troupe in the world. Was our attitude.
Yeah. Cool.
There was no one as good as us. And that's we were in Toronto, so we were fairly isolated. And so it was easy to convince ourselves.
But you actually. But you know what what I've noticed is when you walk that path and you continue to walk that path over and over and over, it's not just magical thinking. It's you've proven to yourself that, I've done this and I know what I'm doing. So I can appreciate that, where you're like, nah, I know my shit.
Yeah. We had from the start, we always had people telling us we were doing it wrong. All the people at Second City in Toronto would talk about, they're very unprofessional. They don't.
You were never going to be liked by Second City. It was pretty clear from the mirror exercise.
Suits. They don't. They sit at the bar drinking before the show. They talk to the audience before the show starts.
That's amazing. Would you ever get drunk? Did you ever do a show drunk?
Oh my God, all of them. Not by the start of the show, but by the end of it. Yes, yeah. Always drunk. We'd do an hour of sketches that we wrote, and then we'd do an hour of improv after that. So usually the improv set,
So by the time, could you walk a straight line, or it was just sort of, everyone was it was free for all?
Well, we were pretty good at drinking in those days.
You're Canadians.
Yeah, we're Canadian, and we are, again, young. Yeah. We're quite young.
Yeah.
A lot of energy.
Yeah.
And, and again, very rebellious. So we weren't, we just had this attitude that we could do whatever we wanted, and we never listened to anybody about anything.
I think that's why I liked it.
Yeah.
I think as a kid, it resonated a lot. It felt like kind of a rebel, where it's unless you really have my respect, I feel like that. Just even as a kid, I just felt like I was like, I'm not listening to you unless you have my respect.
Yeah. Yeah, and we had, and the guy that, that we needed to listen to the most, and who we should and did, was Lauren. And basically the thing that Lauren just kept kept saying, and to everyone else, was let them do what they want to do.
Great.
You know,
Yeah.
like Lauren just kind of defended us and protected us and kept other people from trying to tell us what to do. You know, and and he would give us advice, and if we were really fucking up, he would give us guidance on how to get things done properly.
What were some of the challenges that you had to face for you? Like, did you, being kind of like the shy introvert, I imagine, were you sort of like the peacekeeper in the troupe? Did you also try to like use that role in your family? So you went from one family to another family, and did you?
A little bit, and I was definitely I was, I think, always very protective of Kevin, because Kevin was
Like your best friend.
yeah, because he was very like easy to sort of I guess manipulate or take or hurt or so I kind of would kind of take care of Kevin.
Yeah.
But it was again, we always had as much as we would fight and argue about everything, there was just that bond of I might disagree, or I might think that sketch that you're doing is terrible, but you're still better than everyone else in the world. Was the attitude.
Mm-hmm. You had each other's backs.
Yeah, we had each other's back, but we were very, very ruthless with each other, and which was, I think, was a good thing, because we weren't polite with each other. We weren't, and we were very strict about the things we wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Steve came in with a sketch that we thought was lame, the other guys would tell you pretty quickly. Like, oh, that's, no, I'm not going to do that. What do you think what do you think we are, Benny Hill? We're not doing that crap, So that was kind of our attitude, and then happily, and then Lauren. I guess we did our special for HBO, and Lauren was hugely important in that. Just the advice he gave us on how to do TV. But then when we finally shot the special, we did two performances that night for two different audiences. And the first show that night, we were terrible. It was like the first time in our lives as the kids in the hall, we got scared, and we felt overwhelmed by all the machinery of production, and we were also working with a guy that we insisted on working with who didn't really know what he was doing. So at one point, Lauren actually kind of stepped in and reblocked every sketch in the show, and actually wound up directing, calling all the camera cuts.
Lauren did, or
yeah, Lauren. Yeah, wow. Lauren went into the control room and basically called all the shots.
That's amazing. And the person
great.
The person you brought on, was that just part of the troupe where this person had gotten you to a certain point and you wanted to bring him along, or?
He was a friend of Bruce's, and
Bloody Bruce.
Yeah. And so the troupe said, well, we want this guy to direct it, but he had no experience doing a multicam show. So Lauren basically took over and made things work. But then the first show, we're awful. We were just kind of overwhelmed and being polite and quiet and not being us at all. Mm-hmm. And so Lauren, in between the two shows, Lauren sort of took us aside and said, so I assume you aren't really interested in having a TV show.
No.
And he said, because, if you have any interest in being on television, I think you're really going to have to be an awful lot better in the next show.
Oh, my God.
And we were all and I think Kevin and Scott and I, we thought, okay, yeah, we were too I think frightened and docile, and we went, and I think we smashed we basically put on punk rock music in our dressing room and smashed all the furniture in our dressing room. We just basically smashed everything up and danced around and sang along with punk rock albums.
It's amazing. So just to kind of get out the nerves and just get it all out, just shake it all out.
Yeah,
it's so necessary.
Yeah. So then the next performance, whenever the stage manager would try to get us to wait here and be stay hidden from the audience, be polite, we just would no, fuck off. And we'd go out in front of the audience, and we'd start, and we had our friends, the Shadowy Men, playing music live in the studio. So we just go out and start dancing to the shadowy men in front of the audience. And
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And we'd be all like sweaty, and they'd have to like clean us up before the sketches would start.
This tracks so much of why we're friends.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever wrecked a dressing room, but I can definitely feel like, yeah, it's that. Like, no one controls me. No one's a boss of me. Like, like.
Yeah, we just thought, we were just gonna like make this. We were gonna turn this TV studio into the Rivoli. We were gonna turn this into our club.
Amazing.
And we weren't gonna let anyone tell us what to do or how to do it.
Right.
You know. So we did what we always did, which was be completely unprofessional.
But it worked for you. It was a system that worked.
Yeah.
So the ruthlessness between you and your friends of you and Kevin
McDonald.
Yeah. So you and Kevin and Lauren. So there, I think it's actually always necessary to know what the truth is, because I mean the podcast, great one. So it's always like searching for greatness and searching for like what makes someone great, and trying to figure out like what those patterns are, and like how you break that down. And I think honesty and being ruthless with yourself in terms of like just being brutally honest, and so that way you can kind of navigate where you need to be. Like you're like, I want to get here, but if you're like being like, yeah, it's great, go over here, like and then you're way on this crazy path.
Hold on.
I keep moving, you're not the boss of me. Microphone. So
no,
yeah.
but I know what you mean, and yeah, it's definitely, and I think it's like when you're young, and I think it's a good idea to be arrogant when you're young.
Yeah.
Because as much as I think the only good advice I've ever given people, when people have asked me what should you do, I said learn as much as you can about the people whose work you love, and then ignore it. Completely ignore it, because you can't do what they did. But know what they did, and appreciate and understand what they did. But don't try to like for us, it was like we definitely didn't want to be like SCTV, because we loved SCTV. Like Catherine O'Hara and Marty Short and Eugene Levy and all these Andrea Martin. We thought they're way better at this one, at doing like parody, and their character work is way better than ours. So we thought, we're not going to do any parody. We're not going to do any. Celebrity impressions. We're not going to do any of that, and that was just out of the question. And we also weren't going to do politics, because that's what Saturday Night Live did. So that's theirs. That's not us. We won't. We're gonna do stuff, and we also said we're not going to be Python. We're not going to. Our sketches will end. We said we can't, because if we try to do that, if we try to get rid of the endings of sketches the way Python did, we'll just be compared to Python, and people will hate us. So we thought, no, none of that. All of our sketches are going to end. They're going to have beginning, middles, and ends.
Yeah.
So that was it. We just sort of deliberately didn't do anything that the people we loved had done before us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Kids in the Hall, you guys were just, I feel like the sketches were pretty honest, and it was more of, like, I don't know, just real life comedy, like situational comedy, wasn't it? Like that, it's literally what, it totally makes sense, because your stand-up, I mean, it's situational comedy, so it feels like just awkward situations, and like, like being irreverent, and...
Yeah, we were doing comedy. We were doing comedy about the people we knew.
Yeah.
About the point in history that we were living in.
Totally.
And we were, and I guess we were the first like sketch troupe that really incorporated a lot of, notice sort of ideas about gender and
no, totally. You guys were in
sexuality.
Yeah.
We were doing a lot of stuff about about homosexuality and also just gender bending before that was really a common phrase.
Totally.
And because because we couldn't get any women to stay in the group, we all learned how to play women. So
interesting. How come no women wanted to play with you guys?
Well, they did, but they'd all get jobs. They don't, because women were much more in demand than we were. So if somebody was good, they'd come and join us for a few shows, and then they'd get hired by Second City. So they'd all get a job that paid money, and whereas we would lose money every week.
But then you became like a hit show, and then it was like huge. And then so you got over, so you destroyed a few changing rooms. And and then just shook it out, and they were like, "This is ours, bitch."
We were just, as I said, it was a fun, a time of, rebellion and experimentation.
And how many years was that?
Between forming the group and being on TV was, if we go from when Scott joined, it would be 84, and then we did our TV special in 88.
Wow.
Yeah. And different versions had been around for about 2 years before Scott joined.
Amazing. And then how long, did it go for after 88?
After we went from 88 till 94.
Yeah.
Basically, we were 89 was the start of this
my childhood
series. The first
in the
season
90s. In the 90s.
Yeah, first season was 89, and we went till 94. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when I found it, probably like 94, 93.
Yeah, most people I think discovered the show after we quit making it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I was about like 10, 11, and it just, there would be cartoons, and I was sort of at that age where I was sort of like, I don't know if I want to watch cartoons anymore. Like, I'm kind of growing out of this. But then it was like, whoa, what's this crazy, zany show that speaks to me?
Yeah, it was, which is a really nice thing about it. And then look, we split up, because we got so mad at each other for a while. Like, we didn't talk to each other for about 5 years.
And what happened?
I quit the troupe. Well, I went to L.A. to make NewsRadio in 95, and then we just didn't talk for about 5 years, and then sort of towards the end of that, we started hanging out a little bit. I was hanging out with Scott and Kevin because they were living in LA too, and we sort of buried the hatchet a little and became friends again.
So were they mad that you left the show, or
that was part of it? Yeah. And but then, so around 2000, we decided let's do a tour, and we booked this tour, and we were startled to find out that in the 5 years that we had stopped being the Kids in the Hall, the show had become like 10 times more popular, and everyone was watching it on Comedy Central at that time.
Yeah, incredible.
And so we booked this tour, and shows were sold out immediately all across North America. I remember we had to kept adding. We did 9 shows at the town hall in New York. We just kept having to add shows, and that was happening like pretty much
simultaneously
every town.
As you were doing NewsRadio.
Yeah, it was actually just after NewsRadio ended that we went out and did on tour together.
Oh my God!
And so that kind of restarted the troupe, and kind of it's been that way ever since. We've kept doing stuff together since 2000. Every year or two.
You're like a band. The dressing rooms and
we'll sometimes take 3 or 4 years apart,
and then come back together, and you're like, we're better together than we are apart.
Yeah, so it's like everyone does what they want to do, and then but everyone starts to get an itch to do Kids in the Hall stuff. So we would tour every 2-3 years. We would get together and tour again, and and kept doing that, and then. After a lot of that, we wound up doing this reboot for Amazon, which was fun, where we actually got together.
Right.
Yeah. So we did 8 new episodes, and and went, oh, look, we're actually still pretty good at this.
That's amazing. How was your time at NewsRadio, and were you close with Phil Hartman? And
Yeah, it was great. Oh, it was a great time. NewsRadio was just an incredible fun, and oddly enough, we it was like an extension of Kids, because it was like we were all these people. We felt like we were the punk rock show on network TV.
Totally,
but does make which is a weird thing to think when you're on primetime network TV. But we felt like we were like the rebels of network television.
I love it. I mean, you have Joe Rogan there doing conspiracies. They literally built the character around him.
Yeah, and none of us were that. I mean, like pretty much. Phil was the only famous person on the show,
from
Phil
SNL.
Hartman. Yeah, so he was famous. I was kind of famous, but no one knew who any of the other cast were at the time. They were all new to TV, really.
Oh my God, it was such a
So,
great show. That was
yeah.
one of my favorites too growing up. It was so good.
Yeah, well, Paul Sims, who I actually saw at the Emmys, I just saw Paul and some of our other old friends from NewsRadio, and he put together this amazing cast and an amazing writing staff, like one of the best writing staffs ever on television, and again a cast that just all immediately fell in love with each other.
That's awesome. So going to work again. So this was now the more elevated, functional family.
Yeah, it was a little healthier. Although it seemed like everyone in the show turned out sort of was in a bad relationship.
Oh no!
And we all kind of really liked hanging out together more than we liked going home.
Oh.
So we spent a lot of time together as a group. And not just the cast. It was like the cast, the writing staff, even the crew.
So it was like a group therapy.
Yeah,
it was like you're home away from home.
Yeah, like the crew didn't want to go home. Everybody wanted to hang out all night after the shows.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So we were, as I said, our whole crew, we'd be there till like 5 a.m. after shows, just hanging out and drinking and talking. And
No way.
yeah, so it was a really fun time.
And do you have any favorite memories from that time?
Definitely just the fun of making the show was, like every night, the whole week rehearsals, everybody there made me laugh and was fun to be with. And it definitely, and again, and the performance nights were always amazingly fun because, just because this great group of people, and it was just I remember like after we did the pilot episode, because technically I was the star. I had I was number one on the call sheet, and I was number one in the credit list. And so basically the first night they had us doing, again, this was kind of a repeat of Kids in the Hall attitude, which was, we did this, they had us, this stage manager, organizing us to come out and do the, bow at the end of the night for the audience. Mm-hmm. And I think we did it once where, everybody came out and then I came out last. And I said to them after this, can we not do that ever again?
That feels weird.
Yeah, can we just how about we just say the show's over and then we all walk to the front and bow?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want to come out after Phil Hartman,
Yeah.
I said, we're not, that's not what our show is.
Sure. Because it did feel more like an ensemble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just said, look, can we please just, so let's not have this traditional coming out and everyone getting their bows and forcing the audience to applaud when they're all tired.
Great. Yeah.
So let's just, let's just go, okay, that's it. We're done. And we'll all come to the front, we'll hold hands and bow. And then we all go out and have a drink.
Perfect.
And so that's how we did it for the rest of the run of the show. We didn't do a traditional bow after that.
And how often did you go in front of an audience? Was it just one night?
We would shoot on, eventually it was Fridays. We were shooting on Tuesday nights, but then we switched it to Friday nights.
That's perfect. That makes more sense.
Yeah, so we would rehearse from Monday to Thursday. Thursday we would do any pre-shoots we had to do and camera blocking with the crew. Mm-hmm. But from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday was just us and our director and the writing staff. We'd rehearse, and then the writers would come down. Paul would decide, he gave us a lot of freedom to make changes and play around with the script. And if he liked anything we came up with, he would add it to the script. Or he would adapt it, or he would ignore it. But he was he was really, really very generous in letting us play with the script with our director.
That's amazing. And did you improv a lot? I mean, imagine just from
Not really. We didn't really improvise, but we would definitely, because so many of us were comedians and writers, we would definitely make suggestions. We'd go, and I remember even in the early shows, we had Jimmy Burrows directing, and sometimes he would just, he basically just shout to me to go, Foley, we need a joke. They go, oh, okay. And it'd be scenes I wasn't in, so
that's amazing.
Yeah, I'd be sitting somewhere, drinking coffee and, reading. And I'd just hear Jimmy go, Foley, we need a joke. And I'd come over, watch the scene they were doing and go, okay, how about this? And,
Oh my God. And by the way, so Phil Hartman in SNL, they called him the glue.
Yeah.
Was he also the glue? Was he the grounding force, voice of reason? It kind of feels like you were also that for, I feel like, the troop. You were probably like a grounding force.
Yeah, well, I think I was still like, a little bit of the punk, and Phil was a little older than me, so he was more just going, "Come on, everybody, let's just get through this. Let's just get it done." And I'd be going, "Oh, come on, Phil. We got to work, we got to change this."
He's like an older brother type.
Yeah. So I'd be like pushing, and he'd be going, let's just rehearse. And and that's most of the time he was right, but he was, it's like Kevin McDonald and I always described Phil as, when we were just fans of him on SNL, he said he had like a perfect comedy pitch, and that he never missed a laugh that was possible to get.
Amazing.
On Saturday Night Live, it was like, and that's what all the writers at SNL want. Everybody.
Perfect pitch. That's an amazing way to say that. It's like Adele's like perfect pitch, and you're just like comedy perfect pitch without fail.
Yeah, you knew Phil was. Yeah, you knew if you wrote a good joke, Phil would get the laugh, and if you wrote a mediocre joke, he would get a better laugh than it deserved.
Oh my God!
That's just with his timing. So he was really brilliant at that. So that's why everyone at SNL, wanted to write for him, and definitely, and on NewsRadio, it was the character that I think everybody loved.
Yeah.
Writing his storylines because you just knew he would kill everything.
That's amazing.
And and it was just fun, and it was fun to even just every Monday to sit down at the table read. And hear Phil do his.
Just watch him do his.
We're all doing a cold read. None of us had seen the script before, and you just go, "Oh wow, that's fun."
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And did you, since everyone was talking about relationships and sort of nursing their, just being like, "Oh man, I don't want to go home." Did you get wind of that, like with the whole Phil Hartman situation? And
well, yeah, we knew there was trouble. Yeah, we all knew that. I mean, we all had our troubles.
Yeah.
And and Phil were definitely serious, but we never thought, what eventually happened. We didn't,
no one saw that coming.
Yeah, no one thought, Bryn was going to, murder Phil and then kill herself. That was just, a huge struggle. I mean, as I said, we all talk like, it was like such an open group. We were
sure.
So Phil would definitely come in and he would complain about his latest fights with his wife and how terrible it all was, and then the next day he'd come in.
Was it jealousy? Like what was it?
Yeah, a lot of us. She wanted to be in show business and wasn't really.
That was
a big part of it. And also just
but I mean,
problems
like
of being married to
a big star.
Yeah, star, and who could be neglectful as a like no one's perfect. No. So he wasn't a perfect husband. He was he certainly was. Certainly was a guy who absolutely loved his kids. That was the most important thing to him.
Yeah.
And in fact, last time I saw Phil, it was like his kids came. We were recording an episode, the last episode of the season where we did what if NewsRadio was, what if WMYX was a luxury ocean liner instead of a radio station.
Oh my God, that's kind of amazing.
So we did basically a Titanic episode.
Oh, wow.
And Phil's kids came down and they were like hanging out all that day with us when we were shooting that, because we shot without an audience because it was, such a weird episode.
It was such a weird.
And one of my favorite episodes that we did, and largely because it was the last time I saw Phil, but it was a really fun episode to shoot.
Oh, man.
But and then we all learned about what happened while we were all on hiatus. I was in Toronto making a movie called Dick about Nixon, and I got a call one morning. I was like going to set and got this call saying, "Oh, the press wants," from my manager and my publicist saying, "Oh, the press wants a quote about Phil." And I was going, "Oh, okay, what about?"
You're like just waking up to this. You're like, "Oh yeah, he's amazing. He's the best."
Yeah. What do they want to know? And then they said, "Oh, you have," and there was a quiet moment. You haven't heard, and they told the news, and we didn't know then that it was Bryn that had killed him. We just knew that Phil was dead, and then I found out that Bryn was dead, and then it was like hours after that we found out that it was Bryn that shot Phil. So that so that it was and so then and everybody on the movie I was on were really nice about it, and they and so I called all the other cast members and talked to them on the phone to see how everyone was doing.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then how?
Oddly enough, Ryan Reynolds was in that shoot day.
What?
He was playing my son that day.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I was playing H.R. Haldeman.
That's a lot to unpack
Yeah.
in this one.
Yeah, and Ryan.
Jesus.
So I met Ryan that day, and he was like there playing my 16-year-old son.
Oh my God, what was that like?
He was this sweet kid. That's all I knew. He was like
yeah.
this very sweet kid. He was, a very good-looking kid and
Yeah.
very funny.
Yeah.
He had,
Canadian.
He was. I was like, I thought, well, he didn't, I didn't know he was going to become the biggest star in the world
sure.
at the time.
You know what's funny? I have like a weird skill set that I can usually predict who I think I saw him in Two Guys, a Girl, and a pizza place.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking he's going to be a star. Like immediately I just, and then he went on to do Van Wilder. I'm like, he's a superstar,
Yeah.
and then he did comedy.
Yep. I just kept thinking he's too pretty to be that funny. I don't like it. I don't want this to be the future of comedy. So comedy belongs to us moderately attractive people, at best.
Okay, so I'm still like wrapping my head around the whole Phil Hartman of it all. So then how do you guys navigate this really harrowing situation, and how, what was sort of the internal sort of team dialogue, and how did you manage to continue to pull through, and how many seasons did you guys go after that?
We did one season after Phil died, and it was a discussion, a debate amongst everyone, not just, I think we all when we all got back to LA as soon as we could, and we had sort of a wake for Phil at Paul Sim's house. Mm-hmm. And it was, and it was everyone. It was crew, it was the writing staff and the cast. We all sort of went to Paul's house, mm-hmm. and our director Tom Sharonis was there, and he directed the bulk of the episodes from after the first season, and it was really, everyone was sort of discussing: are we going to do it? Are we going to try and do more shows or not?
Mm-hmm. And then how do you address the character for Phil? What happens to his character's journey, and what was his character's journey after that?
Well, it was, first I got to say, give credit to Tom Sharonis, because he's the one who at that wake sort of said, basically said, Bryn has taken Phil away from us. Let's not let her take each other.
Yeah.
Let's stick together.
Yeah. That's a great message. Yeah.
And so then once the decision was made to do that, then Paul, basically took it on his shoulders to write the first episode back. And so he wrote, the first episode back is basically all of us getting to work after being at Bill McNeil's mm-hmm. Funeral. Mm-hmm. And, so it was basically all of the characters, and we had Candy Alexander came back for that episode.
Wow.
Because she had left the show, a couple of seasons before that. Yeah. And Paul just wrote a really, great script that was very, very kind of raw in a lot of ways, but still very funny, because it's Paul and it's NewsRadio, so we weren't going to take it all very seriously.
Yeah.
But he just wrote it was a very emotional and, thing about that Phil's character. I guess I'm trying to remember. I think he had a heart attack, and mm-hmm. and there was a whole sequence where Bill McNeil had written letters to each of us in the event of his death, and so there was a whole scene where we're reading all of these letters that he's written to us, and and it was really, really hard to do once we got to it. All week we were kind of pretending it was just a regular episode.
Yeah. And then the minute you're trying to read the words, and you're
doing it in front of the audience, it was I was reading this letter, and I was having trouble just not breaking down. On camera, you can see it, but and then we brought John Lovitz in, who was one of Phil's best friends.
He's amazing.
Yeah, so John came in. Yeah, not a very thankful task to come in under that circumstance, but I think for John, it was this was the last place that Phil had spent a lot of his time, and. And John he'd already played 2 different characters as a guest on the show before that.
That's amazing.
So he was kind of part of the family in a way. And so John came, and we did a final season, and and the ratings just weren't that good that year. Which our ratings were never great, but that year that was your.
I literally thought you guys had. What was it after the fact of when it went into syndication?
I don't know.
Isn't it when it because I just remember
Maybe.
it being like a huge show.
I think it was very popular with people that found it. But it was like
my family.
But the guy who ran NBC's scheduling hated us. So he kept moving our show around constantly to try and get it canceled.
Oh my God!
But at the same time,
too much of a rebel.
Yeah, but at the same time, we also had Warren Littlefield, who was running NBC at the time, was a fan of the show, so he kept keeping us alive.
Oh my God, that's amazing!
And the guy in charge of scheduling kept trying to kill us by moving us to nights that were dying for. But every time he'd move us, we would help the show that he would Originally, we were on after. I guess we were supposed to be on Thursdays. We were supposed to be on the Thursday night. But this
Which
guy
was the big show.
Yeah.
That was the big night.
Yes.
Thursday was like Seinfeld and Friends
and that's what we were promised after our pilot. But this one guy wouldn't let us have it. So he put us on after Wings, which at the time
liked Wings.
Yeah, but at the time Wings was having trouble with ratings. And they weren't doing great, and so he thought, well, I can kill this show by putting him on with Wings.
Oh God!
And
then you just brought up all the ratings.
yeah, but the Wings ratings went way up once we were their lead in.
That's amazing.
And our show, we would get up into top 10 sometimes. And so then he moved us to Sundays.
Oh no!
He moved us to Sundays with Mad About You, which was also having problems at the time.
Mad About You was also a big show.
Yeah, and we helped bring up Mad About You's ratings.
Oh my God!
So he moved us to. When did he move? Then he moved us to. I guess it was back to Tuesday with. I think was it Tuesday? Yeah, with Third Rock from the Sun.
Another good show.
Yeah, and the ratings went up for them.
Oh my God!
And then eventually he moved us. I forget where he moved us the next time. But we had like 8 time slots.
Sounds like the movie in Howard Stern, the Howard Stern movie, where the and BC, what's his name? Tanner, what's the guy's name? Paul Giamatti, where he's like trying to coach him to be more professional, and it's Howard Stern.
Yeah.
Same idea where it's like, I'm not gonna be and it's like that's what works for him, and then he's trying at every turn to try to get Howard fired.
Yeah.
And it's like to cancel his show, but the ratings are just crushing it. And
and luckily
sounds familiar.
Luckily for this guy, a show called The Drew Carey Show came along, and so then he finally put us up against Drew Carey, and Drew Carey was kind of going for very much a lot of the same audience.
Oh,
and that show was was a huge hit. And that finally killed us in the ratings.
Oh no!
Yeah, but we still got another year together, which was nice.
Great.
Yeah.
So I love talking about the work stuff, but now we have some time to get into the aliens.
Sure. Okay.
So how we met was on Clubhouse talking about the aliens and blue aliens, and so tell me about the first. Time you. I was gonna do like a Dave Chappelle bit where I was like, "Tell me about the first time you met O.J. Simpson." The first time I met O.J. Simpson. No, but tell me about the first time you saw a UFO, and how did you get into this? And did you and Joe Rogan? Did he get you into aliens, or did you talk about with him? Because obviously, I know he's a big alien.
Yeah.
Guy.
No, we were both. Joe and I were both into UFOs. Issue back in the NewsRadio days. We would talk about it a lot. We'd have disagreements. Like Joe was much more. Joe was into more the ancient alien thing, and I didn't believe in that.
And what is the ancient alien thing?
The idea that basically all of human history is aliens.
Right.
Anything interesting that was built, aliens built it. The idea that
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, and the pyramids were built by aliens.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe that. I thought, well, humans are pretty smart.
Right.
And they're pretty good at math and stuff. Like the Egyptians were pretty good at math and architecture, and so I remember at the time I would say, look, Joe, I would believe that aliens built the pyramids if if we found like one electric light bulb in there,
Yeah, totally.
But I said it's a Stone Age technology. They're very good at it.
But don't they have like perfect precision? Isn't that where we are, like our modern technology can't even come close to that? How precise it was.
Yeah.
And,
but if you look at Egypt, you go, you can see the progression of them. They didn't start out building the pyramids at Giza. They started out building ceremonial mounds, and then from there they progressed to step pyramids, and then from there they just kept refining it for like hundreds of years. They spent refining their pyramids until they got to the pyramids of Giza. So yeah, they spent hundreds of years studying how to do it.
Yeah.
And they were also people at that time in history were acutely aware of the stars.
Yes.
And
everything was perfectly aligned, right?
Yes, and they knew, and they studied, they studied the sky, and they studied mathematics and geometry, so they were very advanced.
Totally.
So they were able to do, and they also had, a labor force that was, which were not slaves. They were just incredibly, they were technically very skilled labor force. And it was also part of Egyptian culture at that time that you did your public service. After you brought your harvest in on your farm, you would then go do your public service, in Giza to build the pyramids. So everybody would go and work for like 4 months at a time on the pyramids.
Yeah, they still can't figure out how they did it.
No, yeah, we don't know exactly, but we have pretty good guesses. We know there's evidence of how they built ramps and how they and basically you used like logs to roll the stones, and that they were really good stonemasons too. So they did, they knew what they were doing, So I didn't believe. I mean, I do believe that there were encounters with non-humans at that time. I just don't think that everything humans did was attributable to aliens. But I think there's definitely a lot of sort of historical evidence.
I feel like Joe's kind of all over the map. Like 1 minute he's like, yeah, this is what, and then the next minute he's like, nah, he's like 1 minute he's like, yeah, we walked on the moon. No, we didn't. Fuck that
well,
noise.
That's true. He does.
So
get
he
dragged.
goes back and forth where it's like, yeah, we did it. It's a conspiracy.
He's always had a tendency towards conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And
same.
mistrust of government.
Same.
Same. But again, it's like it's one of the things where I go, no, we did go to the moon.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. I mean, there was even a movie just recently with Scarlett Johansson where the whole we wanted to win the space race. So is there a possibility that Kubrick, filmed some shit and was like, oh, look at us, oh, the Russians, we need to beat you guys. Blah.
Yeah.
And then, but I do think we.
But the premise of that movie, because I read that script.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you going to be
I auditioned for it. Yeah. Yeah. For the part of the director. But the premise was they were worried, it's a fictional premise that they were worried that the mission might not work, so it'd be better as a backup do a fake version. But then they actually did fly to the moon. But in this, there was they did a backup just in case.
Got it. That could have happened. I mean, I think that there's like a scenario where I think we definitely went to the moon. Who knows? Yeah. I don't know. It was the '60s. '60s were weird.
I got to know a lot
Kennedy
of I got to know a lot of the guys who went to the moon.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So I got to know like the guy I played on Earth to the Moon, Al Bean. I got to know him and
what did he say?
And Pete Conrad and
has he seen aliens?
He never said he saw aliens, but I mean definitely there've been more and more stories coming out about Apollo astronauts admitting that they did see weird things and did have weird encounters that they couldn't explain. But definitely, like Dave Scott was our technical advisor, who was Apollo 15 commander, and as I said, I met Al Bean, Pete Conrad, and Dick Gordon, are the crew that we played. And so we actually had dinner with those guys, and I had a lot of phone conversations, and got some lovely gifts from Al.
That's awesome.
So I'm meeting those guys. I went, oh no, they went to the moon.
Yeah,
and also we didn't have the technology to fake it.
Yeah, no,
we had better technology for getting there than we had for faking it. Special effects at the time were not up to
it was pretty rudimentary. Unless I mean Kubrick, he was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
He was good.
But the special effects team on 2001 was a revolutionary team. But they, but even them, like even if you watch 2001, they do not accurately portray what it would be like to be on the moon. Like when you watch the actors in that when they're supposed to be on the moon, they're clearly functioning at full Earth gravity. You know, whereas you watch the actual people that were on the moon, they're 1/6 their body weight.
Yeah.
You know, everything's 1/6 its weight there.
Nice.
And we didn't really have all the movies before that when people are supposed to be weightless, it's all slow and
Yeah.
and it's in a real life when you're weightless, it's not slow and it's not graceful, it's awkward and you bounce around and you look silly. You know,
Kind of like swimming? Is
yeah.
it okay.
Or not even because you're moving faster than you would with an atmosphere.
No, that's true because there's no wind resistance.
Yeah. In film they would always portray weightlessness as being slow and graceful.
Yeah.
And in real life, you move faster than you do on Earth. And
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, and if you're not careful, you fall down and you flip all over the place and you look
my
silly.
God.
And all the astronauts did fall down on the moon,
Wow.
because they would go too fast and they'd get carried away and they'd fall down.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Something I learned today. Okay, so the first time you met OJ.
Yes.
The first time you saw aliens.
Well, I've never seen aliens. I've never.
Didn't you? No.
No, but
I've seen a
UFO. I've seen a UFO.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
But I've never seen beings that I'm aware of, anyway. And so again, I was interested in the subject, and Joe and I used to talk about it. And oddly enough, it was like, and then I saw this documentary called Out of the Blue by James Fox, and that was one that kind of really woke me up to, because there were things like going back like '97 when I was there was the Phoenix Lights, which was never properly explained. So that was a big deal to me back in those days.
What are the Phoenix Lights?
It was basically there was a craft, or more than one craft actually, were seen traveling over Phoenix over several hours, traveling about 200 miles, being reported by thousands of people. And being, and then people reporting that these things were being followed by military craft, trying to chase them down, and then then the government claimed that it was flares. And
they do.
Yes, and what is true is that yes, the military did drop flares so that they could then report that it was flares. So they said, look, here's the photos. It's just flares. But what all the people saw wasn't flares, because people saw something that was tracked for hours, traveling 200 miles on a consistent flight path, about the size of a football stadium.
My
or some
God.
people said the size of a mountain.
There were hundreds of people, right, or thousands, or
Thousands, yeah.
whoa.
Including the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, who at the time tried to debunk it with a terrible press conference where he had one of his his lieutenant governor forced him to dress up as an alien and did a press conference saying, you guys take this all too seriously. But then in years following that, he admitted to James Fox that he saw the UFO himself.
Sounds like a Rick and Morty sketch.
Yeah, I know. So he came out and said, well, I saw it, and I knew it wasn't human. But people were panicking and they didn't know what to do, and so he decided to try and calm people down. But he said he saw it, and and he was a pilot himself. And then later, Fife Symington has become a real advocate for disclosure, and was a part of the congressional hearings they did years and years ago that like Leslie Kean helped organize with James Fox, and has been a real advocate for telling the truth about UFOs since then. So I've jumped back in time.
Sorry, no, but
Yeah.
it was we were talking about the first time that you saw an aircraft, an unidentified aircraft. But you were relating the Arizona.
So I started,
what's it called?
the Phoenix Lights.
Okay.
Yeah, so Phoenix Lights. And then there was also in 2003, I think, there was Leslie Kean was the only person to cover it, but the French government put out a report in 2003 called the Cometa Report. That was basically it was military, police departments, psychologists, astronomers, physicists, all studying French reports of UFOs. And after a lengthy study of these, fairly, very respectable people, they came out and said, with the Cometa report, and announced UFOs are real. And the most likely explanation for them is an extraterrestrial hypothesis. Mm-hmm. And that's the French government's assessment of UFOs in 2003, was that they're real.
Wow.
And they're most likely alien. And they completely dismissed any notion that it was any kind of secret technology. Mm-hmm. That it wasn't Russian, wasn't Chinese, wasn't American, wasn't European. And then not long after that, there was also like the Brussels incident where the Belgian Air Force was tracking and photographing triangular UFOs over Belgium. So there's all these pretty significant things happening, which I took very seriously. Mm-hmm. But then I watched James Fox's movie Out of the Blue, which was the first time I really got exposed to a lot of the history and a lot of the military accounts of UFOs that I wasn't aware of. Things like Malmstrom Air Force Base, which for people who don't know was in '67, Robert Salas was the guy who was in charge of one of the guys who has to turn the key in the slot to launch a nuclear attack. So that's his job. And,
wow.
And he was at
he's
a
got
nuclear.
The keys. He's got the codes.
Yeah. So he's in a nuclear missile base, and he's one of the two men that has to do that to launch a nuclear war. And they had a UFO over this missile silo in Malmstrom in North Dakota, right? And when it came over their base, it basically shut down all of the nuclear missiles. So they would have been impossible for them to launch.
I heard about Skinwalker Ranch. Is there something?
Well, that's later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they definitely. So there was this incident where So I learned all these things from James Fox's thing, and all these military people coming forward and telling their stories. And I thought, well, this is a little more serious. I got to take this more seriously. There's a lot of great evidence, a lot of great testimony here. And then from there, I read Leslie Kane's book about government and military officials coming forward with their stories of UFOs, and so we started taking it really very seriously. And then and I was talking about it publicly, and then I was going to go on Joe Rogan's podcast to promote a different podcast that I was doing. and I texted him before, and I said, Joe, you're going to be happy to hear I'm deep into UFOs right now. And Joe messaged back, said, it's all bullshit. Those people are crazy.
Oh, no.
And I went, what? Joe.
You talk about it all the time.
Yeah. But I guess he had done his Joe Questions Everything show.
Okay, at which point? Where
this was I don't know, mid 2010.
Okay, so we have a year before the world implodes and the aliens invade and
they
kill us all. Are they going to kill us all? What's happening?
Yeah, well, let's back up a little bit, because we were. I was talking about how I dragged Joe back in, right?
Okay,
to the UFO thing,
right?
And then because this leads up to how I know things that I shouldn't, that I'm surprised I know now. So then so Joe said it's all bullshit. So I sent a list of
2010,
movies.
Right?
Yeah. So I forget, maybe later. I forget now. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely it's probably maybe 2015, maybe or 16. But it's definitely before the New York Times article.
Which
the 2017, the Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal, front page Sunday Times.
Do we have that?
Front page of the Sunday Times.
Oh, about aliens and that aliens are real.
Well, they outed that. Well, they outed the existence of ATIP, the Pentagon's UFO research program, study program,
which
was advanced anomalous threat, advanced aerial threat identification program.
Oh, can we see that? Can you pull that up?
AATIP. I think.
Just the tip.
Yes.
I just couldn't. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. They had to live with that. They came up with the name. They came up with the name. The Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. That's it. Yep. So Lou Elizondo who just
right? Yep,
yes.
yep.
And Lou just came out with his book about his experiences.
Are we on a first name basis with Lou?
I've had dinner with Lou. Yeah, I've had dinner with Lou.
Nice,
Nice. And we message. But so let me go. All right, so Joe, I'm on Joe's. This is before the 2017 article, which sort of changed everything. And I send him texted him a list of movies he should watch. And then I get a text back from around 4 a.m. I'm back in.
He just smoked a bunch of weed. He's hanging. Yeah. He's like hanging with friends at the Comedy Store, and he's like, I'm back in.
Yeah, and the movie that really got to him was a movie called Bob Lazar, Area 51 and the Flying Saucers.
Yep.
Which was made by Jeremy Corbell. And so we wound up talking about Jeremy's movie on Joe's podcast.
That was a wild movie.
Yep. Yeah. And then after that, Jeremy hears that, this comedian has been on Rogan talking about his movie. so he messages me on Twitter and says, thanks for putting a word about getting Joe to watch the movie and everything.
This is Bob Lazar? Or
Jeremy.
Okay.
Jeremy. So Jeremy Corbell messages me about this, and I said, "Oh, cool." And then a little while after that, I was in Joshua Tree, and I messaged him and said, "Hey, where's a good place to go in Joshua Tree while I'm here with my family?" And we started texting back and forth, and then he invited me out to go to the Storm Area 51 thing that happened a few years back. Do you remember that when this would have happened after? Because I guess I helped get Jeremy and Bob Lazar on Joe's podcast.
No way.
Yeah. So Jeremy brought Bob Lazar onto Joe's podcast, and Bob had stayed out of public for decades.
He's been in hiding. He's like, I want no part of it. Please leave me alone.
Yeah, not interested.
I want to be in hiding. I don't want any heat on this. I don't want anyone talking to me.
Yeah, he was busy. He had his company. He had his life. He had his new wife. Everything was good for him.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be involved with any of this.
That kind of seems like if it did happen, that kind of makes sense where it's like you put the information out there, and then when it goes horribly awry, because I imagine if the government is telling them, hey, if you talk, then,
Well, he went public because he was afraid of being murdered.
Yeah.
That's why he went and, went with George Knapp over in Vegas on the news. And again, so Jeremy invites me out. I went out to Storm Area 51 out in the Nevada desert.
And what exactly? So
it was an event. There was some kid started it saying we should all storm Area 51, and Jeremy says, "Well, we shouldn't do that. But let's maybe have some sort of a festival and a gathering."
Cool.
So we had this. It was this very cool, 2 days out in the desert, and
kind of like a Burning Man for
UFO
folk. Yeah, that tracks.
And that's where I first hung out with Jeremy, and also I met George Knapp there, and we became friends.
And who's George Knapp?
George Knapp, he's the guy that broke the story that Area 51 exists. Before that, it was known, the government had never admitted that there was an Area 51.
And how did he know?
He was approached. Well, he interviewed Bob Lazar, and he broke the Bob Lazar story. He also had John Lear. Yes, John Lear, right? I only dabble in the UFO world. And he was a pilot. He worked as a pilot who worked for the intelligence community, and had a lot of records as an aviator. But he's the one who came to George's TV station in Vegas with all these documents about Area 51 and that UFOs are real. And so his boss, George's boss, didn't want to look at it. So George said, "Hey, let me have a look at that." And so he looked at it and went, "Okay." And and so he started interviewing Lear, and then Lear started telling him about this guy who was claimed to be reverse engineering flying saucers in Area 51. And then George said, "Well, all right, let's talk to that guy." And so they talked to him. At first, they talked to him.
Bob Lazar, right?
Yeah. And at first, they kept his identity secret, and they just shot him in silhouette. But then eventually, he went public with George, and that's basically the reason we know about Bob Lazar is because of George Knapp. And so then that's how I became friends with Jeremy. But Jeremy and I started hanging out. But he had never seen anything. But he's been making movies about UFOs pretty much his whole adult life, and a lot of really good ones. And so we're hanging out, and we're just out walking his dog one night in an orange grove, and
This is you and Jeremy.
Me and Jeremy, and I sort of go, and there's a beautiful night, and and I'm looking at the air traffic, commercial air traffic off in the distance, and saying, this would be a great night to see something.
You willed it into existence.
Yeah, and within 30 seconds, Jeremy goes, Dave, turn around. And I turn around, and we see this, it looked like a triangular orange glowing object off in the distance.
Don't you have a photo of it?
I mean,
not a photo. Sorry,
a drawing.
A drawing.
I do have a drawing of it.
Can we see that drawing? Do you have it?
Yeah. Can I give that to you somehow?
Oh, heck yeah.
All right, let me find it.
Are we in a simulation? What do you think?
Most likely. I think, yeah. I think it seems to make a lot of sense, and almost everything seems to make more sense if we are in a simulation.
It kind of, I'm now on the algorithm for near-death experiences, and it's so interesting. Sorry to your point about simulation, just real quick before we get back to aliens and Bob Lazar and seeing this alien craft. Basically, that every single person who's ever had a near-death experience, it's sort of like this whole thing is a play. And how their experiences, they have to go through a life review, and it's a bunch of TVs of this is your life, kind of like your life flashing before your eyes, but and it's always in TVs or it's a movie theater or there's all these different movies around.
And it's sort of happening outside of the notion of time.
So there is no time.
There's no time, but you're getting to review your whole life
your whole life
instantaneously,
and you get all these downloads of you have to experience the good, the bad, the ugly through like the other person. So like the good deeds that you've done or the less not so good deeds you've done, you have to like suddenly be like, oh yeah. So I'm always like playing that in my mind, where if someone cuts you off or someone's like an asshole to you, you're just like, I'm like, damn it, I'm going to have to relive this on the life review. So I'm always like.
But the good news is that everybody wins.
Yeah, no, it's basically.
Everybody gets through.
Yeah, you're judging yourself essentially.
Yeah.
So you have to, so it's all love.
It's bad news for religion because there's like no rules to follow.
You know what's really interesting is that they say that they're, it's just like, the encounter that people seem to have is they say, I am that I am. So it's the same thing in the Bible. But like that, it seems to be an amalgamation of sorts where it is just like of higher being. Yeah. And your whole family greets you if they're dead. And they walk you through and they're like, hey. And, and then you go to this giant kingdom that has apparently in every single person's experience is unique to their own, but it's always the same process in how it happens. So there's the life review, your family greets you on the other side, or friends, and then you have this architecture that looks like a castle that looks like I want to say the Renaissance, like kind of like all the buildings in Italy or Michelangelo. So so I guess that sacred geometry is very inspired. Anyway, so to your point, I've been thinking more and more that it's a simulation, and I wonder if these things are running the show. Wow.
Well, definitely, I think the simulation makes that. So that's what we saw. That's a drawing I did the next day.
Whoa!
And the lights, by the way,
how big was
on
it?
the front of it, by the way. Those lights were approaching us.
Oh my God! Weird.
I thought my guess was it was about the size of like a Greyhound bus or of an 18-wheeler kind of. Like it was the size of a Mack truck or a bus.
And it was yellow. It was gold.
It was gold and orange, and the body of it pulsed with golden light, and the front also pulsed with those white lights. And we saw it circle this valley we were in, like basically in just a matter of seconds. It traveled probably like 10, 15 miles in just a few seconds.
Oh my God.
And got to where we were and stopped and hung in front of us for about a minute. Yeah, and it just hung there in like this sort of 3/4 pose, like Barbara Walters would do. And it just hung there while we looked at it.
Barbara Walters would pose?
She always said pose in 3/4 because it's slimming.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also how you have to pose for your passport photos because it shows the maximum amount of your face. You know, you need to show one ear and both eyes for your passport photo to be valid.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's true. So it basically posed in a way for us to see as much detail as possible.
Hey.
And hung there for a full minute and then slowly went off behind the mountains. And the other part was that neither of us said anything or reacted in any way, except at one point Jeremy said out loud, "I'm not even going to try to take a picture," which is a weird thing to say. Wow. For a guy who has practiced getting his camera out and getting the settings ready to take a picture of a UFO if he ever saw one. So and Jeremy hates when I say this, but my view was that the thing we were looking at was in control of how we responded. You know, I had no emotional response at all, no excitement. It was just like calmly watching it and not saying anything. And I didn't take a picture. We just watched it.
That's how I feel when I'm in front of a mountain lion, where I'm just like, I'm calm. It's fine.
How often does that happen?
A few times.
Wow.
I was living in Utah. Yeah.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I was face to face, but very different. This is very different. But
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts swirling.
Yeah. But yeah, so that happened. Jeremy and I shared this thing, and I started talking about that publicly because I thought, well, I saw this thing. You know, I know a lot of people are afraid to talk about these.
Your
sort of
coming
thing.
out party.
Yeah, I said,
I believe in aliens.
I said if I talk about it, that might make it easier for people who've had experiences and have felt humiliated by it.
Totally. Okay, so I hear. I don't know if this was relating to Skinwalker Ranch or maybe if that was the Bob Lazar documentary and everything sort of just.
Well, Jeremy also made a documentary about Skinwalker too. Yeah.
Okay, well, hold on.
Yeah.
So there was wasn't there something where there was stories that I'm trying to remember where this is from, but there was a guy who saw kind of similarly like with mountains and the UFO came really close, but then they tried to take a photo and like all of their devices weren't working.
Oh, that happens a lot.
That's what I hear.
That happens. That happened on. There was a program called NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science, that Edgar Mitchell was a part of, who was one of the Apollo astronauts. So he was involved with this, and it was also Robert Bigelow. He ran Bass Aerospace, it's like his own aerospace company. He made his fortune in like budget hotel chains, but he was interested in UFOs, and so he, along with like Edgar Mitchell and an Irish scientist named Colm Kelleher, and a man named Jay Stratton was involved too, who's now going public as well. They studied Skinwalker Ranch for a long time in UFOs, but then after NIDS ended, Harry Reid, who was the Senate Majority Leader at the time, met with George Knapp, who told him about this Skinwalker Ranch and what was going on there and what had been happening there. And
what is happening there? Because I kind of, again, you're talking to someone who only slightly dabbles, so I'll remember things and then I'll just go right out the window.
Well, Skinwalker was, back when they first started studying it, and George wrote a book about it with Colm Kelleher. It was this family bought this ranch in Uinta Basin, and they just started having weird things happening, just like crazy, weird poltergeist events that were terrifying them. They had things like they had this what looked like a dire wolf, which is an extinct animal, from Ice Age era, that came out of the woods and attacked one of their
dire wolf from Game of Thrones.
Do they have dire wolves in Game of Thrones?
Right? Didn't they have dire wolves?
Yeah, they're like basically giant wolves.
Yeah, giant wolves.
And this thing came out of the woods and tried to kill one of their cattle, like tried to grab one of their cattle out of a corral. And they shot it, and they kept shooting it. Then they went and got a bigger gun and kept shooting it, and it didn't react at all. And eventually it just wandered back into the woods. And, and by all descriptions, it seemed to be a dire wolf. Wow. And then, so that happened. But they also had something where they had like 9 head of cattle that were in a corral that suddenly disappeared. Like 1 minute they were there, and the next minute they looked over, and the this corral was empty.
So like, for instance, oh my God, oh there you are, and then
I'm not there.
wait,
Yeah.
where'd you go?
Yeah, they said it was like that fast, and they're looking around. So they searched the entire ranch, trying to figure out where these cows went, and they couldn't find them anywhere. And then they eventually found there was like this locked like a container vehicle, like almost like a train container vehicle, on the property, and it was padlocked, and they suddenly they decide to look in there. They unlock it and they look in, and all the cows are inside this thing, in like almost in like a trance. And it would have been impossible to get them in there.
Yeah.
Like it would have been a lot of work to get them in there. It would have been very, they
My
would have
mind is being
destroyed
blown
the place.
right now if this is actually like true.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
So these are the things that they were reporting happening. And Robert Bigelow kind of heard about this, and they decided they would come in and study. And he hired all these scientists to come in to study this ranch. And they kept finding that, this ranch, just weird things kept happening. You kept seeing UFOs and weird events,
Do you believe
portals
in
opening.
spirits? Okay, so the port. Now we're getting really into it because I talk to dead people, so that's just
I know.
or no, dead people talk to me.
Yes.
So that's fun.
Well, I said there's so much
I
overlap.
know when they die. Sometimes that's a whole thing. We can get into that. Oof.
Well, that's one of the main conclusions that a guy named James Lukatsky, who ran OSAP, came to at the end of all of their studies. He said you can't study UFOs
Without studying
honestly,
all this other stuff.
without studying the paranormal. He said, life after death, psychic phenomenon.
There we go. Yeah.
Hauntings.
Ayahuasca. So
Yeah.
DMT, the whole DMT, we release DMT when we
hallucinogenics,
sleep and then when we die. And so I wonder if there's some sort of portal, that like opens when we dream or when we die. Because, my dad, he was talking to his, when he was dying, he was seeing his parents, like right before.
Yeah, which is something that sort of hospice care nurses
They all talk about
talk about that. This
They all
happens
say the same
all
thing
the time.
all the time.
Yeah, that as people are dying, they suddenly they become people who have been in dementia for years.
They suddenly they're back in.
They clear, have a wonderful conversation, say that, well, I'm seeing people in the room.
Yeah.
And they describe the people. Sometimes even those hospice care workers see things as well, whether it's like just light phenomena, like the room will fill with light
Yeah.
that they can't explain.
Yeah, I had an experience. I'll try to make this quick, but my father, when he was dying of cancer, actually both my parents. That's a whole. There's a whole thing. When my dad was dying of cancer, and he had lung cancer just from asbestos, and so they took out one of his lungs, and then a few months later he was running, and then the cancer came back. It was stage 4. So he ended up going to the hospital. He was in a pretty bad state. He didn't know where he was anymore. And that's when he was seeing, I see dead people. He was seeing his family. And then there was a moment when he was on a ventilator, and they were like, hey, this is probably how he's going to die. We can't get him off because he has one lung. And I just remember going home where they're like, hey, you should get some sleep. You guys are all exhausted, da-da-da. So we go home, and I just remember sending a prayer to my dad over and over and over, just saying, Dad, you're a fighter, you're a fighter, you're a fighter. You have to get off this. I don't want you to die this way. And they're like, it would be a miracle. He has one lung. So it's basically impossible. And everything we know about COVID, people just getting off with 2 healthy lungs is virtually, really, really hard. And you're lucky to kind of survive it if you were on a ventilator. So that night I'm just crying and chanting and just praying to my dad or telepathically trying to talk to him. And I'm basically everything's an experiment as far as I know. So, so that morning, I'm not even in the room. I came there a bit later, but the doctors really early in the morning were like, hey, do you want to get off this? And so he wrote on a piece of paper, I'm a fighter. So it's, and then he got off of it. And they're like, it's a miracle. And then he died the next day. But it was really interesting when he died. I could feel, literally it drained, the life drained from him. And then you could tangibly feel his spirit. It sounds weird, but floating above him where I could still feel like he was close to his body, and then it just felt like it just kept going up and up and up. And then when my mom died 8 months ago, I had a dream, and her message to me, like I had no idea, like she's totally healthy, like running, and we were skiing the year before, like she's 75, but a very like young, healthy 75. And so she came to me in a dream that morning, and she was like, I miss being young. And then I found out like a few hours later she had passed. So she came to me leaving a message of like how much she loved being young. So, or there's another dead story where my friend, her grandmother was like a mom, and she was sick at one point, and I'm walking my dog Charlie, and all of a sudden I get this like really strange like energy, and I was like, what the heck is going on in this voice? And it's like, please help me, I'm really scared. I'm like, either I'm crazy and schizophrenic, and or again, I'm gonna try this as an experiment and see if I'm like, okay, I hear a voice. So I'm like, hey, just go to the light, you're okay, blah blah blah. And I'm like, there's no reason to be scared. I'm pretty sure this might be, my friend's grandmother. And then seemingly that energy goes away, and I guess it goes into the light, and it's all, resolved. And so I immediately call my friend, and I was like, did your grandma just die? And she's like, she died 2 hours ago. There's no way for me to know that. So there's something, there's like a portal. So I think between the Skinwalker Ranch, and I feel like there's just so much that we don't know. And they talk about like with aliens or encounters that they have like these telepathic conversations, like you were saying, you were sort of in this like, it had control, or there was sort of this I don't know, telepathic conversations.
It's definitely a consciousness interaction, not just a visual sighting. Yeah. And definitely, I mean, the things that you've experienced, you're not not alone. These are common.
This is all an experiment to me. Yeah. So I just keep going like, well, there's something here. I don't know what it is, but
But there have been people throughout human history who've had these experiences that you've had.
Oh yeah.
And so this,
they keep happening.
Yeah. So
the dead now just come to me. And I'm like, okay, yeah.
And that's one of the sort of with science, you gotta go, well, science just keeps saying it's impossible, so it didn't happen. But I sort of go, no, but it keeps happening.
It's more of the observation, where like science is just being, there's an observation. Isn't this study?
Well, it's a scientific method has its limitations, which is if it's not repeatable and you can't do it in a lab and all of that. But it's that notion. But it's in a way a lot of people have gotten off of what they should be doing in science, which is if something impossible keeps happening, then you try to figure out how it's impossible. Yeah. And we've done that with other things throughout our history. That how do we explain things that seem impossible, and then we figure it out. So
then Joe gets back in, and he's like, "I love aliens."
But so it's like, like I said, so I think like what you're experiencing, which I have never had those experiences. Like I've never had any real anything that I could call a psychic experience.
Well, you have that app, right? Isn't the thing on the app? Wait. So Dave
from Russell Targ.
Is that a CIA recruiting device? So if you get a number right, I got like a bunch in a row, like psychic, right?
Yeah. No, well, if you can do it, like my daughter always scores way above chance on it.
Yeah.
So I think she's got some psychic abilities.
And what is it?
And you clearly have it.
So show.
Yeah, there's two of them.
What the heck it is?
Well, there's two of these apps, because I met Russell Targ at the Soul Foundation Symposium up in Stanford University, and told him, I said, my daughter and I use your app.
And what's the app called?
There's two apps. One is ESP Trainer.
Yeah, what was the 4-color thing? That was the
that's the ESP Trainer. That's this one.
Ooh.
All right.
Okay. Wait. So
yeah.
So you have to guess.
You have to guess which color, is the one that will open up a picture. The one of them has a photo behind it, and the rest don't.
It's funny because like the minute you have to like not think, but also like you have to be in a like relaxed state of mind. Damn it. Okay, I'm sucking at this. Nope, not getting them. I'm not. Wait, 2 trials. All right.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Ooh, okay. I got one. There we go.
Yeah.
All All right. Oh yeah.
And here, well, I should turn this on so you can hear the tone, because the tone is a part of the training.
So you have to guess which color.
Yeah, and the tone is a part of
choosing.
The tone. The tone you hear is part of the training. So you have to recognize the sensation.
So you have to pick. Damn it!
It's blue.
Oh,
yeah, that's easy.
Okay. By the way, guess who also has some prophetic abilities is Tanner for sure. Damn it! Not again.
Sure, it's red.
Oh.
I'm colorblind. That one I thought was red.
Oh my God, that's right. He's he's colorblind.
Oh,
so
that's,
this is
that's
good. Okay. I just got 2 in a row. All right, here we go. Get 3. I just got 3.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Damn it. No. Okay.
Well, let's see. What does it say here?
So apparently, if you get enough right, you get a call from the CIA and they want to recruit you.
Well, you only did 13. There's 10 more.
Oh no!
In a test.
Oh no!
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's it called for the people if they want to check it out?
Well, this app is called. Oh, what's it called? No, I can't. I've got to close it to find it.
The sound effect was Killer T.
It's called ESP Trainer, and it's based on the techniques they used at Stanford's. Was it the Stargate program? Is that what it's called? But it was a Stanford University program that was funded by the CIA to train remote viewers, and and it's where they had a lot of very guys who became very prominent and worked for the CIA for like decades. Providing intelligence information.
That's crazy.
And then Russell Targ, when I told him how much we liked that app, he told me there's this app, which he said is even better.
Ooh.
All right. I get
it. Please sign your life away and agree to all the terms.
Yeah. So this one, it asks you questions and you answer the questions as best you can, and it helps you. Teaches you how to remote view.
Mm-hmm. All right, read this question, Susie.
Yeah.
Are there roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Yeah.
Sorry. Are there roads? Roads? Okay. Wait, what? Okay.
You just answer all the questions, and then in the end, it tells you how close you are to describing the picture,
Natural. Okay.
The target picture.
The target picture. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Aw, man.
Did you get any?
Okay, what am I looking at?
Well, it says you got 0 matches.
So apparently,
property matches and picture matches.
That's how prophetic I am.
But you got to do it. Yeah, but it says that the more you do it, the more it's a training device. So that's your first time doing it. So yeah, so you said no roads man-made, and.
No.
No,
I said roads. I chose roads, and then I chose natural roads.
So it turned out it was
no roads.
There were no roads,
man-made?
and it was man-made.
Oh,
yeah. All right.
Obviously,
but the picture you picked.
Come on, Susie.
But the picture you picked. You picked that, which is similar to that. So it is similar.
No, I chose that one.
Oh, you chose that one.
I chose that one.
All right.
I chose the pyramids. Yeah.
Oh, it says their player picked. All right, I can't. But anyway, that's.
This sounds like a conspiracy.
Yeah, then you get the next target. All right, so here we go. I'll try because I'm terrible at this.
Okay.
So it says no mountains or mountains. I'm going to go with no mountains. Are there bridges? No. And now pick.
So how do we show this? Hold on. Okay, so then we choose.
All right, and I'm going to go with that. Whoa.
Oh, my God.
I got it. I never get it.
What? That's amazing. Oh, my God. No mountains, no bridges, everything.
So
the
I got
whole
a
way
perfect
through.
score.
You got a perfect score.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And you do that, and the more you do it, the more, apparently, the better you get at it.
Wow.
As a training device.
That's
As I said,
amazing.
my daughter always gets way above chance.
Well, the first
And
time
you
I did
did
it, the first time, it's.
Well, you clearly do have psychic abilities. You have a psychic
Sometimes.
sensitivity.
Yeah, I feel like, it's more like prophetic. It's like it comes from the source, so it's like the more This is what I've noticed is the more that you're connected to God, source, whatever your term is, mine is God. And sort of like the more you have a conversation with God or the more connected you are, the more superpowers you get.
And
it's a working theory. This is all working theory.
There's also Gary Nolan up at Stanford discovered that there's a correlation between a part of the brain, which I've been pronouncing caudate putamen, but Lou Elizondo pronounced it differently.
Am I having a stroke?
No, there's this little there's this part of the brain that's this little tiny part of the brain that's kind of a central directory. It kind of like information comes in and then it sends it off to different parts of the brain.
Right.
And people with a more dense caudate putamen tend to be more likely to have paranormal experiences, psychic experiences, or UFO encounters.
Whoa!
And they also found that people who have this a denser caudate putamen.
What is it? What kind of it sounds like a food?
Yeah, it's just a section of the brain, and the more densely packed it is, the more larger that area of the brain is, the more people are going to have these experiences. But they also found that it tends to run in families, which makes sense.
My mom, I feel like she would always have 2 glasses of wine because when she would smoke weed, very occasionally back in her 20s or whatever, she would suddenly like know everything and like read everyone's mind. She's like, oh, the guy who I'm dating is totally gonna break up with me, and I think he likes that girl. And then she didn't want to know anymore because it just freaked her out and was too paranoid. She's like, but you know what? It's actually true. That actually happened. So
well, that's the thing.
She's onto something.
It runs in families, but then he also found out an even weirder thing is that it runs in couples.
That's true. That makes sense because I mean, you kind of need to have a partner to kind of you know what I mean. So I need someone who can understand me. Otherwise, it's not gonna. Someone who's too practical.
People who have this part of the brain find each other.
That makes sense.
They recognize each other without knowing it.
That makes sense.
And they tend to to reproduce. So they tend to get together and
and have super
have
babies.
families and have babies that are even more psychic. Yeah. And he said it's and he's done pretty good research on it. And he said the phenomena is real,
Wow.
and it seems to be connected to paranormal phenomena.
I know we have to wrap this up in like a hot minute, but T, I just want to. So Joe's back in. So he's interested in the aliens. I just want to get back to this. Skywalker. So Joe's back in the Skywalker Ranch. So you've been Skinwalker. Ooh, Skywalker.
Skywalker's. I'd love to go there too.
Where's Skywalker?
That's George. That's George.
Yeah, George Lucas.
George Lucas's ranch.
Oh, that's
they
cool.
do all the special effects. Yeah,
that's super cool.
That'd be fun to visit.
That would be so much
I
fun.
also really want to Skinwalker.
So have you been?
No, I haven't. I haven't been yet. But I've talked about going. I really want to go. George and Jeremy say they can set it up, and I also met somebody else who's friends with. Again, blanking on names. The man who now owns. Have you watched the TV series Skinwalker Ranch? Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch?
No, but I've seen.
It's really interesting.
So many podcasts about it, and people talking about these crazy, TikToks. So I feel I'm definitely on the algorithm for it of Skinwalker Ranch.
Yeah. Can we look up the name of the Skinwalker Ranch owner?
It's Brandon.
Brandon Fugel. There, see, there, Brandon. See, I remembered your name once I got triggered. But Brandon Fugel, and I've actually had the chance to talk to Brandon on the phone briefly.
What does he say about it?
Well, he said there's there is phenomena happening there. They keep having they've chronicled multiple UFO sightings all the time.
Do they film it? Do they have anything on tape?
Yeah, lots.
What do they have on tape?
They have all these.
My God!
They are mostly like light orbs, traveling around that show up and disappear. That's one time they captured one that seemed to fly through a mesa, like they saw it go from behind a mesa and come out the other side.
And this is in Utah.
This is in Utah, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's an area called they call it the Triangle, where they've done a lot of launching rockets through this area to try and study what happens. Because if you do something to disturb whatever the forces are that are there, then things start happening. Mm-hmm. And this is like a guy named Travis Taylor is one of the guys in charge of it, who's a rocket scientist and physicist, and so they've been studying it. And they at one point they had one thing they had like somebody with like an advanced LiDAR, which is like a laser scanning device, imaging device. There, they had extreme high speed cameras running, and they fired rockets through this area. And at about 30 feet, the rocket blew up. It just, and they thought, oh, malfunction, the rocket blew up.
They tried it again. It did it again.
No, they looked at the footage. They said, well, you got to look at this on the high speed camera. They saw there was some sort of a blob at about 30 feet above where they launched the rocket in space, and they're looking at it, and they said then they looked at the rocket launch, and it hit this blob at 30 feet,
a giant jello,
and crashed. It crashed into it, and it because you watch it and because it didn't like blow up and go off everywhere like normally something blows up. Inertia will take it in all directions, and it'll certainly keep traveling in the direction that the rocket was going in. Stopped dead at 30 feet. All the debris came down.
What? Yeah, because it would keep traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they also found that on their LiDAR, there was a huge blank space in the LiDAR data, which meant they were getting no return from the lasers in this circle where this rocket had blown up.
What?
So something was blocking.
Hell?
Yeah, a laser beam was somehow disappearing in this circle. It was showing up everywhere else. It had a 3D image of the entire area except this one circle. Wow. So and they found stuff like that all the time. They found like GPS anomalies where they would track again, rockets and GPS devices they were trying to use to track what was going on, and somehow the GPS devices would appear to be suddenly 100 feet below ground. So, like, the GPS they were getting readings that made no sense.
Whoa.
And this would happen all the time.
Yeah.
And all their equipment would be shut down. They'd be about to do an experiment.
Whoa, wait. This is what I think it's Skinwalker.
Yes.
If they had an encounter, all of, like, everything would shut down. If they tried to get a photo of it, everything would shut down. So
Yeah. And if something showed up here and then they set up all their cameras to look there, the next time it would show up here. And it was like the whatever it was. They said, like the ranch was toying with them.
I was just gonna say they're just fucking. They're just like trying to fuck with us. You know what I mean? Because they're like, oh, hold on.
They said there was a consciousness there that was playing games.
I wonder if it's the machine elves. I wonder if the machine elves and the aliens and dimensions. I mean, this is really getting Terrence McKenna and.
Well, I'm friends with Paul Hynek. Do you know Paul at all? You should talk to Paul. You'd love talking to him. His dad was J. Allen Hynek, who was the chief scientist in Project Blue Book from the 50s up to 69.
Whoa.
Who was originally his job was to debunk UFOs for the
and then he
Air
became
Force.
A believer.
And then as he was going along, he
kept
saying, "We can't explain this," and then the Air Force would say, "Well, we'll just call it an unknown." They say, "Yeah, but why don't we do more research?" Nope, just call it an unknown.
Oh my God.
And we'll move on. And he said, "But we could go out and study it." He said, nope. And so he got really frustrated, and eventually he had to come up. He was the guy who came up with the swamp gas explanation, which was infamous. Saying that a UFO was swamp gas.
What is swamp gas?
It's like the idea that there's like sometimes swamp gas ignites above a and that kind of enraged all the people who had seen a UFO, and including Gerald Ford, who was their congressional representative at the time, or senator at the time. And he said, we need to investigate this. And
oh my God.
so it's, so Paul's dad was, I guess, one of the most famous UFO advocates for disclosure and study, and was an astronomer, and really respected scientist. But Paul is really also deeply interested in hallucinogenic phenomena, like DMT and
I feel like
and the machine elves and all that.
I feel like that's where the veil thins and you can see more.
Have you done DMT?
I haven't done DMT. I saw a boyfriend at the time do a DMT trip. I was there sort of, in a shamanic setting. I've done psychedelics and shrooms and
shrooms are great.
Psilocybin once. That was very, very intense. But usually there's an intention when I've done it. Setting an intention, and
which is good. Yeah.
So the acid trip that was that was rather really intense, and that was more of just like a healing. So I had to just go through all the just like I was like trying to heal some trauma, and so I thought I thought I healed the trauma, and then I was like, oh no, we're back here again. Well, I wanted to heal, so you kind of have to go through it all again, and then you come out of it, and you're like, I'm amazing. So sort of I found my inner like connection to God and your inner goddess, or your sort of we're the embodiment of God. So it's like. Tanner, you know the Bible. What is it? You made in the image of me, right? What is the quote?
Yeah, well, we're made in the image of Jesus, of God.
Yeah.
You want to find the verse for you?
No, I was just curious, but I think very much that like, so my trip was going through just all this muck, and then found like, my inner, like seeing that reflection of being made in the image of God, where I feel like we're all pieces of or energy of that expression of God. Yeah. And so it's like human consciousness trying to understand itself in these bodies, in this realm.
Yeah, which it's definitely, that seems to be consistent experience. I mean, and I think people I think we can only interpret it in human terms, or in, the terms of our current being alive reality.
But what was also really interesting was the telepathic conversations that I had, like with a partner at the time. I mean, that just opened up my like world. Even just smoking occasional weed, where there would just be like these dimensions that would open up. And the only problem is sometimes you can have like bad trips, but sometimes like I think like bad trips are actually good trips. But that particular trip, at the very end, when I felt like I was. Is it Michelangelo's Venus or whatever? Was it Michelangelo?
The Venus on the half shell?
Yeah. So I kind of was like, I felt like the embodiment, it just after going through all this like terrible muck, and then being like, I was so hard on myself, and I was like, I think I looked in the mirror before, and I was like, I put on pounds and this, and I was like, damn, I'm looking good. Like it felt like, all the times that I'm so hard on myself, or all these ways. And then, but then there was something really interesting that happened when I would look at photos, like the trees would be moving, like swaying in the wind. And then the water would also be going back and forth, like in real life, kind of like a Harry Potter image. And it only did that with actual real photos, which is weird. And so with paintings or with anything else, like it did, nothing else moved, but I think like the photos. So it was almost like, I would see lightning suddenly, like there would be dark clouds, and I was like, am I seeing into something? Like what is, it's so hard to figure out where you're like, what am I looking at? Like, what is this new dimension? Is this a dimension? It's just some chemical in our brain.
Well, yeah. There's also, I don't know if do you know Chris Ramsey at all? He's a magician, but he's been doing a lot of interesting stuff to do with consciousness and UFOs and things lately. He's launched a channel called Area 52, and he went up to like the Monroe Institute recently for his podcast to study out of body experiences. Whoa. To try and train to have
astral projecting. Meditation. You can get there. You can go out in space.
Yeah, and that's what he was doing.
I do that all the time.
Process of meditation.
With the process, that's the through line. Is you also like when you meditate, you also talk to God, but then you can astral project and kind of go anywhere and kind of
Yeah, you should get Chris on.
I would love that.
Talking to Chris.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's also an excellent magician too.
Amazing.
And funny guy.
That's incredible.
He's very funny. Cool guy.
Wait, so hold on. So you think we have another year, and we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
But I love talking to you.
I think a bunch of things are coming to a head.
Where are we right now?
Well, we're at a point where you've got someone like Lou Elizondo, who ran ATIP. He went public in 2017 in the New York Times article that Leslie Kane, Ralph Blumenthal wrote, and so he's got his book out of his experiences, and he's pretty much he can't reveal top secret information. He can't he has to honor his NDAs or he goes to jail. but he's come out and said everything that he can, and he's said flat out, Roswell happened. It was in fact, he said there were 2 craft that crashed in Roswell.
Whoa.
And one of them was able to take off again. So said,
whoa.
Which is something I'd never heard before. But he also said they recovered, I think he said 4 bodies.
And I think Bob Lazar also said that he saw a body or something, right?
Well, he said he saw something. He didn't know what it was. He didn't know if it was a doll or if it was somebody.
Right.
But he said he was allowed. He said a lot of times he was allowed to see things. And he thought maybe it was a test, or maybe they were deliberately showing him things that were fake, that if he would talk about later would discredit
him.
So he always thought they were always playing games with him. He would be shown some documentation that he could read, but he couldn't, So he would get little bits of information. He would go, "Well, why are you showing me this?" And he said, he had no way of knowing if any of that stuff was true. So the only thing he could say for a fact was true was what he knew about the craft that he studied. And there was this craft that he was allowed to study, and he wasn't allowed to study the whole thing, but he was allowed to study what they thought was its propulsion system, because that was his field of expertise. So, so he studied the propulsion system and determined that it was some sort of gravitational propulsion mechanism, and he also determined that the way these things fly is and this turns out to be something that people keep experiencing, was that we see them, they're like a UFO, looking like a flying saucer like this, but when they want to go somewhere, they flip up on end and then fall that way.
Whoa.
Into, they basically create some sort of a warp
Propulsion
bubble. Basically some sort of a warping of space-time.
So it's like a piece of paper where you just fold it and they just go boop like
Yeah,
that,
they
right?
just-
Isn't
yeah.
that the...
Well, for them, it's, they just basically, they're traveling outside of space and time. So
Must
they
be
are
nice.
Yeah, so they are.
I would love that. Can I be transported?
Yes, and that's when they want to get somewhere fast. They go up because the propulsion system is on the bottom, and so when they want to get somewhere, they just go up on end, and that's like what people saw with the gimbal video.
So what's he
and
saying?
what people keep reporting is that when these craft take off, they go up on end.
Wow. So it's coming to a head. So then is the world going to end? Or are we going to...
I don't know, but I do know there's things like Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds, 2 political enemies, right? Like Chuck Schumer, he was
I'm totally not political, so I won't know.
but he's the much like Harry Reid, who launched OSAP. He is the Senate Majority Leader, so one of the most powerful men in the world. Is one of the most powerful men in the U.S. government is the Senate Majority Leader. He and a Republican named Mike Rounds, they authored like 70 pages of legislation called the UAP Disclosure Act. It was co-sponsored by Kristen Gillibrand from the Democratic side and Marco Rubio from the Republican side, and it was basically a legislation, proposed law that they were trying to get passed, that was passed in the Senate committee unanimously, bipartisan, which never happens anymore.
Never happens, no.
But they had unanimous bipartisan support for this bill. And it was to create, and basically, and it talked about in the cover page on it said the American people have a right to know about non-human intelligence and non-human technology, and what the government knows about these things. Wow. And they go through in a very detailed, basically addressing all of the things that people have been saying is happening about retrieval of UFOs and reverse engineering of UFOs, which a guy named David, Jesus Christ.
D, what you got?
David
Grush.
nailed it.
Yeah. So David Grush was assigned by a guy named Jay Stratton in the UAP task force that was set up after the New York Times article came out. So Congress set up this UAP task force. Jay Stratton handpicked all of these researchers. One of them was David Grush. David Grush spent 4 years investigating. He was like a top level intelligence officer. And in his 4 years, he came across 40 witnesses who told him that people who had firsthand experience of reverse engineering programs, top secret reverse engineering programs within the government that are illegal, and how some of it had been contracted out to private industry, and that Congress was being lied to about it, and that the laws were being broken.
Wow.
So he came out and they did the congressional hearing. It was David Grush and Ryan Graves, who came forward to talk about like a training missions off of the East Coast of the U.S. where they were encountering UFOs every day for a 2-year period as they were training to go out to the Middle East.
Whoa.
And they had David Fravor, who had gone public, who had chased the UFO called the Tic Tac. It was because it looked like a 40-foot long Tic Tac off of San Diego. And he and Alex Dietrich, his wingman, who was a female pilot, they tracked this thing, chased it, and it, and they'd been seeing it off the Nimitz and I think it was their the Roosevelt was their radar craft. So they were tracking this thing on radar for a week. They finally sent out this Top Gun pilot, David Fravor, who was the leader of the Top Gun pilots on this strike force from an aircraft carrier. And he tried to chase this thing down. It flew circles around him and took off and disappeared.
Whoa.
And reappeared 60 miles away at their top secret rendezvous point. Yeah. So these
They're
people,
I feel like they like to fuck with you.
Yeah. So they all testified to Congress, these 3 people, right? So that all happened. And then now you've had, like, Lou Elizondo's book is coming out, and things like the Soul Foundation, where people are discussing, which was interesting because it was like, these things are real. There was no discussion of, are they real? It was just, this is real. How do we handle it? How do we disclose this in a way that is as least disruptive as possible to society, right? So that's going on with a lot of very prominent scientists and very intelligent people and very prominent people from the history of UFO studies, and I think Jay Stratton's also going to be publishing a book. Who's kind of like been there for everything from over the last
But why do you think it's
years.
coming to a head? So, like, where do you?
Well, because I was going to say the Schumer legislation. At one point, they almost passed it, but it got gutted by a guy named Mike Turner, who is the head of the Intelligence Committee in Congress, and also just happens to come. His district contains Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which coincidentally is where whatever landed in Roswell was shipped to.
Whoa.
And it's also where Project Blue Book was set up in the 50s. So this guy who answers to the military, basically as a politician, and has Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in his district, basically gutted this legislation. So now they're reintroducing this legislation again, and it's to create a panel, a civilian panel that would report directly to the president on declassifying information about UFOs.
That's cool.
So that if that passes, that's going to be a big deal. And so it's just, I think it's getting to a point where, as much as like mainstream media tries very hard to ignore this subject, it keeps
Bring it back
keeps
in.
being forced.
Yeah.
And too many legitimate people
are now being convinced that maybe there's more to this.
Yeah, including, as I said, one of the most powerful men in the U.S. government, Chuck Schumer, basically has basically come out and said there's a non-human intelligence at work on Earth that we do not know anything about. We don't understand it. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know if they're from here or if they're from somewhere else.
From the oceans, I know that's a theory.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely there's a guy Gallaudet, who's a rear admiral. He's also come forward, and he was the head of NOAA, right? Which is the national. Basically, they monitor the environment and the weather for the military. They're the ones who tell you when hurricanes are coming and when to expect tornadoes and all that sort of thing. That's their job. And he said, they've been monitoring undersea objects that are traveling like under the ocean at supersonic speeds, which is impossible. Like they're traveling. These things are flying past submarines and they're being monitored all the time.
And you don't think that's like technology that we've been hiding?
No, it's technology that we.
I know. Doesn't Joe kind of think that?
He does sometimes, yeah. But it's technology that any reasonable person talking about it goes, it's so far beyond anything we're capable of. Mm-hmm. And if it was any human technology, the people who had it would not be keeping it a secret. They would be using it to dominate the world.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Like if it's Russian, it would be game over.
You're right. Actually, that's a valid point. Yeah.
If it's Russian, there would be no such thing as the United States government anymore.
Well, isn't that kind of like when the aliens come is when there's nuclear bombs, and that's when they show up at those opportune times, right?
They showed up at Los Alamos when they were testing the first nuclear weapons. Robert Oppenheimer saw them.
So there's something like, "Oh, hello, what you guys getting into? Let's not blow up this. We might actually need this."
Yeah, the people who developed the atomic bomb saw UFOs all the time when they were testing.
That's wild.
Yeah, and again, Roswell was just
after
a little, and it was just miles away from where the nuclear bomb was tested. Because that's the other thing. People always try to say Roswell. They always try to sort of depict Roswell as this wacky hick town, but it wasn't.
Wait. Oh, Oppenheimer. So the movie. So
Robert Oppenheimer.
So was that like that little town that they sort of made up, and that's where kind of Roswell is, right next door. Is that correct?
They built their Los Alamos testing facilities in the desert, not far from Roswell, and the 509th Fighter Wing was stationed at Roswell, which is where the Enola Gay flew out of, which dropped the bombs on Hiroshima, right? And it was, so at the time of the Roswell crash, the Roswell base was the most important, the most secretive, the most protected military installation on Earth, because it was the only place on Earth that nuclear weapons existed.
Whoa.
And the guy Jesse Marcel, who basically was called out to investigate this thing, and came back and said, we've recovered a crashed flying disc. And then a day later was forced to pretend.
Oh, just kidding, nothing to see here.
He was forced to pretend it was a weather balloon.
A weather balloon.
Yeah. Which is crazy. So, because Jesse Marcel, he's the head of security at the most important military base on Earth. Mm-hmm. He was also employed later in the Bikini Atoll hydrogen bomb tests. So if he was apparently crazy and incompetent, he still had a career where he was taken very seriously and was put in really important jobs. But we're supposed to believe that a guy who is in charge of security for the most important base on Earth can't tell the difference between a flying disc and a crashed weather balloon.
Doesn't seem very likely, especially if they're, man of physics and science. And, I mean, it's like, unless he had a psychotic break, but,
And then why did they keep employing him for so long?
Yeah, that wouldn't be a thing.
He spent the rest of his life working for the U.S. military in very high-ranking positions.
That doesn't quite track.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good place to end, but this is such a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend. This has just been incredible.
My absolute pleasure.
And I would love to talk, actually, to have you back on and
anytime.
Like literally just talk more aliens, because I mean I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah,
with this,
it's true.
Where I'm like I could feel Tanner being like, okay, at some point we have to wrap this up. I'm like, I know, but it's just so good. Oh, I don't want to end. So we'll talk about aliens next time, because this is, we have to get into more of this and really because that's actually how we met, is diving into all this kind of stuff. And,
yeah. Which I'm very grateful for.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. This has been really fun. This has been great. All right, guys, please like or subscribe. Actually, both would be ideal, so the algorithm can find us. See you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in.
A whole nother level.